Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Lonnie Ryan. I'm the Deputy Program Director of the MS and Nonprofit Management Program here at Columbia. I'm also an alum of the program and an adjunct lecturer. It's my distinct pleasure to welcome you all today. In the room and online, we are sitting among CEOs, caregivers, providers, practitioners, students, alumni of our program, faculty, and we're all here together because we care so much about the mission-based work. So thank you for coming together today. This is a great opportunity for us to all share best practices, network with one another, talk about the issues that we're all facing, and refresh and renew, because spaces like this give us a real sense of optimism and togetherness, and that is so valuable. I'm just going to take a moment to introduce you to my boss and our amazing program director, Dr. Basil Smikle. Funny story about Basil, he wears many hats. And among them, he's a TV commentator. So I was falling asleep the other night, and I had been watching the news, and I woke up and I heard my boss's voice in the bedroom, and I was in a bit of a panic. And then I looked up, I had been watching MS Now, and he was on TV. So he's everywhere, and just an amazing leader. Like so many of our faculty, Basil is a nonprofit practitioner. He serves on boards, he gives back to the community, and I'll let him tell his own story. But I just want to thank you all for being here, and I'm just going to make a little plug for the program. You'll see the QR code here. That's how we're going to have everyone participate in our Q&A. We'll also take live questions from those of you who are here. I want to welcome the 600 people who we have online today. So welcome and thank you for being with us. And the 75 people we have in the room, many of you came back again, so thank you for being here with us. And I'm also going to make a plug because there are QR codes around the room, and we'll share them out. We're going to have a post-event survey for you to share with us your thoughts about this event and what you'd like to hear more about. And we're also always looking for capstone clients and grant writing clients, and our students are always looking for internship opportunities. So thank you to the SPS events team, Andy Horner, our intern Joyce, our intern from instructional support Lisa, Lucas from photography, SPS media team that's here, the faculty house staff that's here, all the people who served and prepared our food today. I think I've caught everyone except for my amazing colleague Vicky Klesick, who is heading up the online cohort and waving to us from the back of the room. So thank you all. It takes a team. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Basil Smikle.
Good morning, everyone. I do that one more time. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Lonnie. When you start off of saying, I have a fun fact about my boss, like I don't know where that's going, but thank you for thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I love working with you, and Vicky, thank you so much for the work that you all do. And she's right. I wear a lot of hats, which means I don't sleep much, which means that, I'm up at 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm like, oh, let's do this. So I'm sorry for all the hell that I give you. I don't email you at 1 o'clock in the morning. I wait till 9, but it's still a lot. And I apologize in advance for all the ideas I'm going to have after today. But it's such great work that we're doing. It's great to work with the both of you. To Andy and the events team, Joyce and Lisa are interns who are leaving us at the end of this, actually like in 2 weeks, right? You graduate? Congratulations. And to all the folks that helped put us together, including and especially Dalio Philanthropies, because without them, this would not be possible. So I want to thank them for their support as well. Given the feedback that we've gotten already from day one, and we're now at day 2 of Reimagining Impact, Adaptive Leadership, and Strategic Innovation for Nonprofits, I'd like to actually make this an annual gathering. 1 day, 2 days, but in doing so, we need your help. So let us know what topics, issues, themes that you think we need to be focused on as a program, and how we can then better work with you to try to advance a lot of those issues. So we want you to stay engaged, not just with our program, but with each other. We want to make sure that you stay in conversation about the challenges in our sector, how we're strong, how we can be stronger, and we'll make sure that you'll be able to hear from us on a regular basis, from the experts on campus and in the room, to help guide and support you. Today, we ground ourselves, I think, in the scale, significance, and responsibility of the sector. We talked before about resilience and community, about the urgency of innovation in a moment defined by disruption. And if day one was about framing the challenge, today is about going a little deeper, about how we operationalize that vision in real time. Because the conversations we're stepping into today around diversity, equity, and inclusion, around coalition building, around technology and artificial intelligence, these are not abstract. They are the defining tensions and opportunities shaping nonprofit leadership right now. Let me begin with DEI. We're operating in a moment of political retrenchment, where the language of equity is contested, where the commitments many organizations made just a few years ago are being tested, and in some cases rolled back. But if there is one thing this sector has always understood, is that equity is not a trend, it is foundational. DEI is not simply about representation, it's about how decisions are made, who's at the table, and how resources are distributed. Ultimately, whether our organizations are truly responsible to the communities we serve are embedded in those principles. What today's conversations will push us to consider is this: what does it mean to practice DEI when it is difficult, when it is politically inconvenient, when it requires us to take risks, not just rhetorically, but structurally? That's where leadership matters most. And that brings me to community and coalition. If there is a through line across the nonprofit sector today, it is this: no single organization can solve the problems we are facing alone. The challenges before us, economic inequality, educational disparities, public health crises, social fragmentation, are too complex and too interconnected. They demand collaboration not just within the sector, but across sectors. But coalition building is not easy work. It requires trust in a moment when trust is declining. It requires alignment in a moment where incentives are often misaligned. And it requires leaders who are willing to move beyond institutional silos, who understand that impact is amplified when we share power, information, and strategy. Today's conversations, from breaking down silos to thinking about contribution, connection, and engagement, are really about redefining what leadership looks like in a networked world. Not leadership as control, but leadership as coordination. Not leadership as ownership, but leadership as partnership. And increasingly, that work is being shaped by technology. We can't talk about the future of the nonprofit sector without talking about AI and the digital infrastructure. Artificial intelligence, data systems, algorithmic decision-making, these are no longer tools at the margins. They're becoming central to how organizations fundraise, how they deliver services, how they engage communities, and how they measure impact. But with that opportunity comes risk. We know that technology is not neutral. Algorithmic bias can reinforce existing inequities. Digital access is uneven. And without intentional design, the very tools meant to expand opportunity can often deepen exclusion. So the question is not whether nonprofits will use AI, it's how. How do we ensure that these tools are aligned with our values? How do we build digital equity into our strategies? And how do we equip leaders, not just technologists, but nonprofit leaders, with the literacy needed to navigate this space responsibly? So this is where innovation becomes critical. And I want to be clear, innovation is not just about adopting new tools, it's also about rethinking models. It's about challenging assumptions. It's about asking whether the systems we have inherited are capable of producing the outcomes we seek, or whether they need to be fundamentally redesigned. Innovation at its core is about courage, the courage to experiment, the courage to fail, and the courage to build something new. Which brings me to a point that is deeply important to me and all of us here at Columbia. The nonprofit management program is not just a place where these ideas are discussed, it's a platform where they're tested, refined, and applied. As many of you heard last week, which will be a recurring theme you'll hear from us, our program is built at the intersection of scholarship and practice. But more than that, it is designed as a space for collaboration, a place where organizations, students, and faculty can come together to co-create solutions. Through our coursework, through our capstone projects, which Lonnie mentioned, through our global partnerships, we are constantly asking, how can we support the sector, not just in understanding change, but in driving it? And I want to extend that invitation again today. For those of you leading organizations, shaping policy, or working directly in communities, this program is a resource for you. It's a space where your challenges can become case studies. I say that again, your challenges can become case studies, because our students love that, where your questions can drive research and where your organizations can partner with emerging leaders, like many that you'll hear from today, to develop innovative solutions. In many ways, what we're building here is itself a model for what the sector needs to become: more connected, more collaborative, more adaptive, and more willing to innovate across boundaries. So as we move into today's sessions, I encourage you to engage fully. Lean into the discomfort of difficult conversations. Be open to new ideas, even those that challenge your current frameworks. And more importantly, look for opportunities to connect with one another across sectors and across disciplines. Because the future of the sector will not be built by individual organizations working in isolation. It will be built by networks, by coalitions, by communities of practice that are willing to think and act together. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce, or at least speak to, the remarkable voices who will guide us through these conversations today. We'll begin with Eri Noguchi, Associate Executive Director of the Association to Benefit Children, organization I'm on the board. There you go. Yeah. My mother taught English in New York City public schools for 30 years. And when I'm on TV, she's very proud, and she will text me. She said, "You look good, you sound good." But she didn't use that word correctly. So I'm like, okay, priorities, right? I get it. You're never too grown for your parents, right? Right. I'm on the board. And it's a pleasure to work with Eri and Gretchen Buchenholz, who is here, is Matt here as well? Matt didn't make it? He's online. Hey, Matt, who's online, who will challenge us to think about what it truly means to break down silos in order to amplify impact. We'll hear from one of our students, Nina Collimore, a Columbia graduate student whose work on digital equity and algorithmic bias reminds us that the future of fundraising and youth development is already being shaped by technology, and that we must be intentional in how to engage it. My colleague, our full-time faculty member, Dr. Erwin De Leon, lecturer in nonprofit management and research, a research fellow at Knology, will help us navigate the intersection of nonprofits, AI, and DEI in a time of political complexity, bringing both scholarly depth and practical insight to these critical issues. Joining him is Katja Schroeder, Associate Program Director in Technology Management, who will further ground us in what it means for nonprofits to operate effectively in the digital age and AI age. We'll also hear from Xavier, pronounce your last name for me, Xavier. Peixoto, I was close, whose work on contribution, connection, and engagement invites us to rethink how value is created within organizations and across communities. And we'll conclude with Janelle Darras, a friend and CEO of StartCare, who will take us from direct service to systems change, illustrating how strategic partnerships can be leveraged to scale impact in meaningful and substantial ways. Each of these speakers, in their own way, embodies the themes of today: equity, community, technology, and innovation. So I really want to ask you to, and I guess I'm going to say this as both a program leader and a faculty member that feels somewhat responsible. Well, I guess I technically am responsible for all of the students in my charge. And that is, this is a really great opportunity for the young people in this room to learn from experts, people who are on the ground. They have an eagerness to do the work that you're doing. So that's not just a plug for capstone projects, it's a plug for summer internships. How did I do? Did I do okay? Thanks. But it is a real conversation that I would love for us to have about how we really bring in the next generation at a time when I think a lot of folks believe that there's so much anger and frustration and tension and anxiety. But the thing that I look forward to every day is engaging the optimism of the young people in the classroom, and that gives me hope and it gives me promise. And I don't think I'll ever grow my hair back, but it does give me optimism for the future. So before I go, Samai, why don't you come up and welcome everybody today? I want the first voice you hear after mine to be one of our student leaders. Samai Wilson, come on up.
Good morning, everyone. As you heard from Professor Basil Smykel, my name is Samaya Wilson. I'm the program representative for the Nonprofit Management Program, and I'm super excited to have you all here today. Last week, we began an important conversation about what it means to lead in a sector that's constantly evolving. Today is an opportunity to build on that foundation, going a bit deeper into how we adapt, innovate, and stay grounded in our missions while navigating real challenges. What stands out to me about this space is the shared commitment, not just in doing good work, but in doing it thoughtfully, strategically, and all together. That willingness to reflect, question, and grow is what strengthens our impact. I'm again grateful to our speakers for guiding us through these conversations, and to all of you for continuing to show up engaged and open. I'm now going to bring Professor Basil Smykel back up to introduce our first speaker. And again, connect with us students. We're really eager to work with you and to hear from you all. Thank you.
I just needed you to hear from another student to make sure she put in the plug for internships. So, the first person I would love you to hear from her about her own experience, but I just want to say I want to bring up Dr. Eri Noguchi. Eri and I have 3 iterations of interaction. Not only am I on the board of the organization she works at. See, my prepositions today are crazy. We are colleagues, I guess, because you are a faculty member in the School of Social Work. But she also taught when I taught at Hunter College, when I was director of the public policy program. She also taught a course there, which I guess where we first met. So I'm really excited that she is here to talk today about the work that she does. So Eri, please come up and teach us.
All right, so as you heard, Basil is on the board of the organization I work at, Association to Benefit Children, so he's technically my boss too. Good morning. I am here first and foremost as a participant and fellow learner in the symposium alongside the ABC's executive team, both here and online, and of course all of you. So I hope you'll receive my comments this morning not as an attempt to impart any expert knowledge, but rather as the sharing of a perspective that will hopefully spark conversation. So first slide. How does that work? I titled this talk, Showing Up, Locking Arms, Standing Together, because quite honestly, when Basil first asked me to give a talk on what might be some of the ways organizational leaders can rally in this moment, given the specific constellation of challenges we're currently facing. What first came to mind was that we have to keep showing up, especially since COVID, supercharged by explosive advances in technology that have drastically transformed the communications, media, and information management landscape. Connecting in real time with each other has become a much smaller part of all the ways that we plan, coordinate, manage, disseminate information, problem solve, and otherwise navigate our respective worlds. Even brainstorming and visioning often moves into this digital environment these days. And with these advances have come major innovations in productivity, efficiency, streamlining, creating opportunities for taking on new initiatives that reach far beyond what was possible before. And these are all good things. I'm not an anti-technology Luddite, I promise you. And given the titles of the other talks to follow, you will be hearing greater insights on both the opportunities and risks presented by these technological advances, including but certainly not limited to artificial intelligence. I want to argue with an and, not a but, for the importance of prioritizing, whenever possible, coming together in person, especially in this moment, There's something powerful that happens when we're in the same room together, rubbing shoulders, experiencing each other's humanity, that allows us to feel that we can have each other's backs. And in a world where we spend so much time, me included, in front of a computer screen, creating opportunities for old world solidarity, engaging in the back and forth of face-to-face conversation, not only deepens our sense of connection, but perhaps more importantly, trust. A few years ago, we undertook an initiative, and I see Nancy in the audience, so she'll remember this as well. We undertook an initiative to foster organizational leadership amongst the parents of the children we serve. We envisioned a core group of parents super motivated to come together on a regular basis, learn about the inner workings of the organization, become familiar with the government agencies and policies that drive the context within which our programs operate, and establish a voice of their own, empowered to articulate and amplify distinctive participant perspective. We imagined them convening forums with other participating families, fielding feedback and concerns so that there would be an organized alternative pathway through which all families could engage in more meaningful ways to inform decision-making, both at the organization and with hopefully receptive partners on the municipal and state side in the halls of government as well. With great excitement and anticipation, we put the call out to all our families, and very few showed up. So we had to switch gears. We asked parents whether our vision of parent leadership resonated with them at all, and what it would take to get them to show up. And the answer, which in hindsight makes so much sense, surprised us at the time. They told us that for them to feel confident to engage in the ways we were describing, for them to trust each other enough to take those kinds of risks, they needed to know the others in the room. So what we ended up doing is every month for an entire year, we hosted family gatherings, mostly in our community garden, designed to foster relationship building, creating spheres where they could connect with us and with each other more informally. And from these gatherings sprouted a deeper sense of community, spinning off into, and for many of our families, this is the first time they stepped up in these kinds of leadership ways. They organized family play groups. A parent committee emerged that organized an end-of-year celebration, graduation celebration that spanned 4 of our geographically separate early childhood centers. So talk about breaking down silos. 11 parents emerged to join our parent council, and one of these parents went on to run for and get elected to the community education council of her child's school district. And she told us she would never have done so if she hadn't built some confidence in safer spaces. That's amplifying impact. The key takeaway for us was, In order to stand together, we need to trust each other. And in order to trust each other, we need to rub shoulders, for real. So we need to show up. So next, a few reflections on locking arms. When working with children, the metaphor of locking arms is so powerful because it evokes the image of a protective shield surrounding them, protecting them, nurturing them, caring for them. Parents lock arms to establish a protective shield around their children, and then we as teachers, childcare workers, healthcare workers, caregivers, and other community helpers, we lock arms to form a protective shield around these families. It's not much of a stretch to imagine the community at large, all of us also locking arms to protect, to establish a protective shield around all of these systems of care. And locking arms is easier when we show up. I offer you 3 examples. First, since January of 2025, a group of C-suite organizational leaders in East Harlem have been meeting monthly in person, mainly to create a space where we could speak to each other. Note, the beginning was January 2025. To speak to each other freely, openly, and honestly about the multiple jeopardies we were each facing as regulatory and policy changes were being issued at head-spinning speed, primarily, though certainly not exclusively from the federal government. We teamed up with the Center for Health Equity and Community Wellness of New York City's Health Department and 2 other CBOs to convene this group. When we first discussed whether to hold these meetings virtually or in person, we knew that holding the meetings virtually would expand participation. But we wanted to create a space where folks would feel safer and more at ease speaking to each other openly. So we opted for in-person meetings. There are about 10 or 15 of us who have been meeting regularly since the establishment of this group. Most likely far more would be in attendance if they were virtual. But what I will tell you is everyone who shows up is 100% present and 100% tuned in. It's not that this is always better. It's just different. Over the past year and a half, our relationship to each other have grown deeper, as has the mutual trust, fostering a deeper sense of spirit of generosity and mutual support. While the name of this group has since changed from the East Harlem CEOs to the East Harlem Leadership Committee, the group still consists of individuals in senior decision-making roles in their respective organizations, and conversations run the gamut from preparing for changes to Medicaid and SNAP to corroborating regulatory and policy communications, sharing strategy on fundraising, and supporting our immigrant communities. The regularity of these in-person convenings has allowed the group to develop a shared voice, which has translated into listening sessions with both the outgoing and incoming commissioners of health, strategy discussions with the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, and even we submitted a joint proposal spanning 7 or 8 organizations to mount a series of community-wide events to strengthen a sense of community and belonging in our neighborhood. What started out as a plan to get the heads of organizations into the same room to figure out what's going on and what to do about it has turned into a much, much deeper and stronger network of individuals who now have each other on speed dial. The point here is not that this network was established at all. Surely the same could have been accomplished on a digital platform. And we've known each other, or at least known of each other, for several years, decades even. But in the face of a growing anxiety that something was amiss, that in our respective silos we didn't have all the tools we needed to be fully prepared, our instinct was to come together, to reach out to each other and connect in person regularly over an extended period of time. What I think happened is that we rubbed shoulders, trust deepened, and a renewed spark ignited. The second example, somewhat similar, is ABC, along with 2 other organizations, took the lead on pulling together in East Harlem an initiative with the Mayor's Office of Civic Engagement. Again, we made the strategic decision to hold our planning meetings in person, which was particularly challenging because we were still navigating COVID. We started this in 2021. But nevertheless, we met in person with a lot of safety protocols. The snacks were always individually wrapped granola bars. We held meetings in community spaces of local housing developments, our own offices at ABC, the garden, we have a community garden when it was warmer out, and a space lent to us by a local public school. Holding meetings in person also meant that when we invited tenant groups and youth, and especially youth, they were 100% tuned in. Because, when youth are online, they're not 100% there, right? Or not all, but some. By the end of the 2 years, we had mounted a youth conference carried out exclusively by middle and high schoolers, a community service fair complete with live music and dancing at a local park, a series of focus groups with tenants and youth, culminating in a community visioning project. And one thing that lingers with me to this day, youth and seniors came together in the same room and discussed community safety and policing face-to-face, honestly, openly, and respectfully across the generational divide. They strongly disagreed with each other, but they also heard and felt heard. And for some of them, they heard for the first time in their lives what the other side was actually afraid of. I can't say for sure, but I suspect that that conversation would have been harder to have if everyone wasn't present in the room together. One last example is of a hairy situation we had between parents in one of our schools and an opioid-safe youth facility across the street. Parents were concerned, some very angry, about the existence of this facility and demanded that it be either closed or moved elsewhere. We convened, again, in person, a series of meetings between parents and the leadership of the facility. Yeah. And we also, with parents, toured the facility and met the leadership of the facility face to face. And we met with them over time. And we learned what services they offer, who they help, how they were helping them, and why they choose to do this work. Both sides showed up, and we each listened to the other side's perspectives. And, in the beginning it was tense, I'm not going to lie to you. But over time, we hammered out the details of what we could accomplish together. Fast forward to today, and there's now a team that clears the streets of used needles and drug paraphernalia from the subway station where a lot of our parents and their kids come to school every day. So the subway station to our school, and also in the middle of the day when we tell them that we're going to go to the local playground, they'll clear the streets and the playground to make sure that our kids aren't stepping over the same. They invite into their facility any individuals they see overnight outside of our school, offer them shower, meal, really, really target the area around our school. And they also have been posting their staff right in front of our school during pickup and drop off. So concrete things, it doesn't address all of the other issues, but it was something that we could do together. And we help them. We help them with any clients who are pregnant or have young children. We've helped them with food and clothing drives. And at a more macro level, we've supported their advocacy efforts. But the thing that moves me the most is that sometimes on my way to and from work, I'll actually see some of our parents talking to the outreach staff of the Safe Youth facility. So the talking is still happening. One last example that's not on this piece of paper. I was at a meeting yesterday of 7 directors of Head Start programs. We've been meeting for the past year. Again, Head Start, federally funded, has also been going through it. And I have to tell you that the conversation, I'm not going to share the details with you, but to be able to say to you that the conversation that happened amongst Head Start leaders who are really feeling anxious and worried, being together in the room and honestly being able to say, here are the things I'm struggling with, and let's problem solve together is, again, such a powerful, powerful way to meet this moment. And then I am almost done, I swear. Standing stronger. So how does all this relate to breaking down silos to amplify our impact? I believe that as the world pushes us to expand our reach beyond the spheres that we can physically touch, there will be an ever greater push to rely on transactional relationships in ever more heavily digitized spaces. This cannot be helped, given the necessity of connecting across geographic divides in ever more complex ways and at greater speeds. As not-for-profits, I think it behooves us to safeguard a corner of the world where in-person human encounters still take place so that we don't lose sight of the commons. And here's where I'll end. I think that what makes not-for-profits distinct is our steadfast, even dogged commitment to the commons, right? To the collective, to the goods, services, experiences, and resources that, frankly, the private sector either can't or won't prioritize, be it art accessible to all, free libraries, accessible quality healthcare, clean air, clean water, free quality education and childcare, safeguarding and even strengthening our democracy, protecting the earth for future generations. The list goes on. It's the stuff that individuals are unlikely to want to purchase for themselves, what economists might call public goods. Rugged individualism isn't going to get us there, and while the pursuit of excellence is important for how we run our organizations, what lies at the foundation of our work as not-for-profit leaders is a fierce focus on the foundational principle that we are in this together, that how we treat the least among us matters, that principles such as universalism, inclusion, broad-based participation, and belonging take center stage, and that these are the core reasons why we show up every day. And for this, we have to rub shoulders. That's it.
Ari, do you have a second for questions? One or two. By the way, I'm going to be walking around. I'm going to be walking around like Phil Donahue today. I said that the other day, and no one under 45. But you all get it, right? This question came from someone online. First of all, one point was that it's such a strong practical message about the benefits of personal connection. Love the deliberate design angle, so thank you. But this question came, we are a nonprofit management agency and wondering how ICE activity has affected trust among those you wish to recruit into these parent and funding forums, and what sorts of things to meet this moment can be shared and utilized to build common cause and locked arms for action.
Yeah, so I didn't put it in my speech just because, we're all being so careful, but one of the reasons why the East Harlem Leadership Committee came together was specifically for that reason, that we were all kind of sitting in our separate spaces thinking, what can we do to help the communities that we serve? So we came together and we, behind closed doors, over a series of meetings, had conversations. I think there are a couple of things that we're working on. I'm a little nervous about saying this, knowing that it's being taped, but we are, we're working on kind of a neighborhood-based rapid response capacity. And again, the way that we're trying to create kind of, having each other on speed dial is part of that story, right? That we're trying to get information out very quickly to our neighborhood partners, to all of the organizations that are part of kind of our locked arms to try to protect the immigrant community that is such a big part of the work that we do.
Thanks. Any other questions? Anyone in the room? Yes.
I really like the part that you were describing, like trust. It's something very important in how we are building community and connecting with. But when we are applying for funds, all these things, it's like all this part of developing and creating trust, it's taking like a lot of our time and energy and resource. But it is not such thing like, okay, here is a grant for you to build trust in your community. So how do you guys kind of divide that part of like when you are having a grant to put and allocate some time and money and a lot of resources in that very important foundation? Thank you.
That's a hard question. I think that part of the answer is we need to engage in very deep ways with our government partners, like the project that I made reference to, where 7 or 8 organizations came together, and we actually went to the state and said, we want to build community. That was a result of a lot of advocacy among community groups to the state, saying this is what it takes to actually build resilience. We can talk about resilience in the abstract, but what resilience looks like on the ground is that people know each other and that we're doing things together, and doing things together actually costs money. And so if you want community resilience, you actually really need to fund it. So I think that's the beginning of the conversation. I'm not as well versed on the private philanthropy side of things, but I think we have to have those same conversations with the private philanthropic world as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Ari. Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Ari. Because we always want to make sure that our students have a voice, I want to bring up one of our students, Nina Collymore, from the great state of Tennessee, from the good city of Memphis, and North Carolina A&T?
Norfolk State.
Norfolk State. I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. Okay. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Michael. Okay, and I just go this way? Okay, got it. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to be before you today. I'm super excited. I'm a little nervous, so have mercy on me. But as Professor Michael said, my name is Nina Collymore. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I am a second semester master's student in the nonprofit management program, and I would like to shed light on digital equity and algorithmic bias, specifically for minority youth serving nonprofits. And I want to give a bit of background context. So this semester, I have the privilege of taking Dr. Segree's class on fundraising, development, and financial sustainability. And I was kind of piqued by this topic through marketing. We are seeing a lot of access being made available, especially in the AI and digital space. And it's supposed to be a level playing field in a sense, especially for smaller nonprofit organizations. However, we have to take a step back and really think about, is it actually leveling the playing field when there is still so much algorithmic bias and lack of digital access? So what do these terms mean? Digital equity is like fair access, it's fair access to technology like reliable internet devices and digital tools. While algorithmic bias are computer systems we use that could be social media, any platforms you can think of, even fundraising, development, and research tools that disadvantage certain groups because of how they're designed or the data that they rely on. I like to think of it like building a house. Imagine you're building a home and you're lacking some of the tools that you need. You're not going to be able to build that house. And on top of that, no one can see the work that you're doing. So how can you grow? How can you encourage people to come see the beautiful things that you're doing if, one, you don't have the tools to do it and no one can see it? Examples of this in the real world in this context would be biased content ranking. AI-driven platforms often prioritize organizations with high engagement histories. Small grassroots youth nonprofits, especially those serving low-income communities, get buried. 2, broadband access gaps. According to GovFacts, millions of Americans will lack and still lack reliable broadband, disproportionately affecting rural, low-income, and Black and brown communities. That means youth can't participate fully in digital programs, and nonprofits can't reach them effectively. Some studies even break this down more specifically as in 1 in 3 students, K through 12, do not have access to computers, phones, or other digital equitable resources. 3, AI moderation bias. Studies also show that AI content filters disproportionately flag language used in Black and Brown communities as unsafe, reducing visibility for culturally relevant youth programs. I'll even use a more recent example of Amazon. They launched an AI program that would allow them to decipher resumes and filter out the best candidates. However, they had to remove that tool because they realized that it was being biased and pushing out women applicants. Imagine if there are similar tools being used on the philanthropic side, looking at your organizations, trying to decipher who they're going to give the funds to. If the data is already biased, how can we ensure that they will have our best interests at heart? But there is good news. There are solutions to this problem. Groups like AI Now Institute, a research organization dedicated to investigating the social, political, and ethical implications of AI, Partnership on AI, PAI, and Future of Life Institute, which is a nonprofit focused on reducing large-scale catastrophic risk from AI, and also the Algorithmic Justice League, are just a couple of organizations that are trying to fight the good fight. And one of the things that I would like to encourage in this conversation is transparency and communications and conversations just like this. Number 2 is capacity building for small profits, nonprofits, funding, training, digital storytelling. I would like to shout out Dominique Jones, an executive director for Global Kids. She's in the room with us today. She's an advocate, and just the other day she was talking about capacity building and how important it is. Going back to the house building example, if you don't have the money or resources to keep building, what use and what good is it? And last but not least, partnerships. I think we should start including the companies that are leading this space and that are the experts into this conversation, like the tech companies, Claude, Chat. They could help us navigate these tough conversations and ensure that they are incorporating nonprofits and organizations that don't always have the visibility that they deserve. And these are some of the resources that I have used. My next steps are trying to communicate more with nonprofits in this space. I'm actually helping with a startup right now called Builder Tech Institute. They exist for the purpose currently in Virginia of helping students, especially in rural communities, build and have access to these new resources that are coming out and potentially giving them job opportunities. So I'm excited to see where that goes. And finishing up my paper, so if you are interested in what I have to say and what I'm writing about, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And shameless plug, I will be possibly someone in this room's future employee, so that's also a reason to connect. But thank you so much.
Way to close it at the end with the job plug. That's we teach them well. We teach them well. And I'll just say thank you so much, Nina. And I'll just say, first of all, does anybody have any questions for Nina? I'm sorry. On her work. I think it's. Did you hear from Dominique at the Urban League event? So you should know that we try to be outside. It's important for the students to be outside. So you should know that we just don't teach them in a classroom. That if I'm doing anything, if our faculty member, we're at events and so on, we always invite students to join us. So it just so happened that the CEO of the New York Urban League had a nonprofit event on, was that Wednesday? It was Wednesday. It was Wednesday, and I had a couple of students come with me and they got introduced to all of my friends there, and Dominique was one of them. So, thank you for remembering. Thank you for connecting, and this is what we do. This is what we do. So next I want to bring up two faculty members. Our full-time faculty member in nonprofit management, Dr. Erwin De Leon, and Katja Schroeder is a faculty member in tech management. So they're going to talk more about nonprofits in the digital age, in the digital and AI age. And then Erwin's going to stay up here and talk more about DEI in an era of political entrenchment. So, Katja, Erwin. That's good. That's fine.
How you doing? How you doing? All right. Oh, anyway, so Nina, thank you, and I am so delighted to be here with my good friend and colleague, Katja. And so, how do we start this? I think we do.
Sorry.
Wait, oh, here you go.
Is this better? Would you like that?
No, I'm just looking for the clicker.
But you don't want to use the. Oh,
She'll take it.
All right.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. Okay, perfect. So we will start. This is our agenda. We'll just start with the state of AI adoption. What are the opportunities for those of us in the social impact sector? What are the key risks, among which Nina already pointed them out? And what are the best practices? Now, we have a few minutes, so we're going to speed through this, and hopefully if you have any questions, if we have time, and of course after this, you have our information to reach out to us. So let's start with this. Maybe one or two, not everyone, but tell us, what is the state of AI adoption in your organization or technology? Yes.
Okay, we set an AI policy in our employee handbook. Specifically, part of it is you could either use it for brainstorming at the beginning of something or in the last step to polish, but not both, because we do want some kind of human interface in it. So that was a good first step.
Are you comfortable telling us what your organization is and how large it is, just to give us a context?
Oh, sure. My name is Michael. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit called Circle Match. We're an education nonprofit that offers college advising to students from low-income communities, and we also empower the students to come back as advisors in their communities afterward and later on be college-educated adults who give back. So exciting stuff. And we have 3 full-time staff members and almost 40 or 50 volunteers who are all having emails, so they do a lot of work, but exciting stuff.
Excellent. Anyone else?
Good morning, Rob Castaneda from Executive Director of Beyond the Ball. We have all of our senior leaders have Microsoft Copilot licenses with the full AI, and it's something that we use a lot. Now with Claude being inside of Copilot as well, that's really helpful as well.
Excellent. Anyone dare admit that they are scared of AI and technology? Oh, we have Gretchen. Well, you have a number, but let's start over here. Yeah, Katja, I think.
All right. I just would say, speaking for the older generation, I mean, I do see how it can be helpful, and our CEO can use ChatGPT amazingly by refining his ideas, and he has to spend much less time than developing a proposal or a concept. But for me, not having grown up with it and just reading a lot about what it can do, how it can take sort of empowerment away from people and jobs away from it. I mean, and so I tend to look at, and Big Brother, it seems like the younger generation they don't care as much about Big Brother being over, like on their shoulder or in their brains, or, or starting, or when you start like a Zoom conversation and then like the AI, he says like, somebody needs to be led into the room. It's not a somebody, it's a thing. It's like, and we actually had a situation at a board meeting where somebody didn't turn off their AI. Like we just thought, okay, now it's time for the closed session of our board meeting. And somebody's AI was still on, and it caused a big problem because it got disseminated to everybody. I mean, it has a life of its own. So I'm speaking from that generation that just sees the downsides and wants to understand how it can be helpful.
This is excellent. Anyone else?
I would argue that risk can be triggered by any generation, what you just described.
Thank you. My name is Marianne Scordell. I work with Common Denominator. We help children learn math in a nutshell.
Okay.
So I'm concerned with the AI also because I'm from the older generation. But to me, so we work across various generations. Our volunteers may be on the younger side. Obviously, the children are children. And my concern is the way it really is impacting the way people communicate, because some people who are using AI, they don't relate to other people in the same way. So that's technology overall. It's not just AI. But the way, we say, oh, the importance of communication, great. However, all these tools, sometimes they have a very negative impact on the way we relate. People seem to be in their own minds sometimes, and it's harder to reach out to them when they're more used to not communicating, but interacting with machines rather than people.
Absolutely. I mean, this speaks to what Ari was saying earlier about the need to come together, right?
Hi, my name is Marie Del Tejo. I'm Executive Director of the ACT program at the Cathedral Church of St. John the Divine. I, too, am speaking of the older generation, and how AI was introduced to me was editing my work as my first platform of ChatGPT. And then I took some workshops on how to adapt that into our program. And really, it's about empowering ourselves to really understand how it can benefit. So the first platform I did this week was take the Department of Health regulations for school age, put it in, and ask for it to generate 25 questions, true and false, about safety, and handed it over to my group leaders. And all the questions really were on target of what we aim for them to understand. So it's really about how you use AI to benefit your program, but it's more important to empower yourself. So one of the things about this workshop, though, was that then they introduced Claude, except I was so used to ChatGPT that when I went over to Claude, it sort of messed me up because it was more complicated.
I hear you. Chat and I are like that.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's chatty to me, and their pronouns are they, them.
They, them.
Yeah, I've asked.
I did learn from this workshop that if you pay for it, it becomes more private.
Yes.
So then that's the empowerment.
Excellent.
AI is the next step. Empower yourself is the next step. Just like when we were introduced to iPhones, computers, and other technologies from people who were born in the 60s, we got through it.
I remember the printing press.
Listen, don't forget
I moisturize.
Today, your phones have trillions of photos, where at the beginning we took the photo and prayed it came out nice, and then had to pay for it to be developed.
ChatGPT can fix it.
That's
Trust me. Look at my headshot. So I think this is a great way, Katya, to take over. Go ahead.
Yeah. So many opportunities and so many risks, right? And then there's also a little bit of hesitation of AI adoption in the room, or questions of how to do it most responsibly, what is one of the key themes also for today. If you look across the industry, you're in good company. Actually, the AI adoption ranges by sector. You kind of like see it more for the private sector here, and you're obviously interested what does it mean for the nonprofit sector. The most common applications are right now in communications, content generation, personalization, donor engagement. We have a couple, when Xavier, right, talks about engagement later. So that is one of what the area here. And then also operations and productivity. You were mentioning the calls where now Otter or any other tool can record, be your little meeting recorder, and that has advantages, but can also have disadvantages if not handled responsibly. If you look across organizational functions where adoption most happens, that is really, what's driving is the adoption with content. So that, creating materials, personalizing materials, that is, where, especially in the early days, the adoption was accelerated from all tools, whether you use ChatGPT or Claude, and now companies are moving from the experimental stage more into the scaling stage, test it once and then scale it out. Would you mind standing by? Oh, okay. Oh, okay, all right. Hello. For the online audience. What I also wanted to say, while the nonprofit sector is not represented on that chart, there is one big sector that is education. And I would argue what we do is educating our stakeholders and getting buy-in, and that requires time for the engagement, the locking shoulders, rubbing shoulders, locking hands. And that's where AI is an opportunity that we can leverage, whether we
do it with a meeting or with content generation, and we have some other ideas as well. All right. Do you have the clicker? Yeah. All right. Okay, so. All right. As you mentioned, Nina, it is unevenly distributed, right? And actually, one of my favorite documentaries is Coded Bias, which which later led to the work of. It's about Dr. Joy Bini, and so she recognized that there's bias in code, and she was really driving that discussions about looking at AI algorithms and how we use them and the content that was put out. And even if you look at tools like Canva, a lot of us are using content generation by Canva in the beginning, like when you ask for pictures, for your content materials, not all groups were represented equally, and you kind of like had to use other materials to make sure that your groups are represented in the marketing and communication materials that you're using. So the AI divide is real. You talked about costs of AI tools, right? If you're on a smaller budget, it is harder for you to use and adopt them, than when you're a for-profit business with a larger budget. And then on the other side, well, it is a discussion about how you adopt it as a nonprofit organization. It is also a discussion of focusing on the AI divide as a cause and mission and to help bridge it. And that, brings, the question of data infrastructure and equality. And some technology companies, they've been offering nonprofit modules and fees, but there's still a cost involved. And then using these free tools, again, is a risk because you have your data, and your data is your most valuable asset. So you do not want to put your data in a free LLM or usage LLM, so that you talked about the policies that you have in your handbook, right? So I'm sure that is one of the guidelines that you will have, right? So using it responsibly would actually require you to move to a tool like Copilot. You had mentioned Copilot, where you have an enterprise subscription as well. But most companies are struggling with building AI fluencies, and that also is in the nonprofit sector, but also in the for-profit sector. And that's where we see right now the biggest gap of companies trying to skill their existing team, and also looking at when recruitment, whether the candidates have AI skills, which I know the nonprofit management students have, so they're good candidates for any internships and jobs. And then like I talked about the budget and then also the operational. I guess with the AI handbook, it is not just like adapting, building fluency, but you also have to look at your governance and include data governance and how you handle AI in the organization as well. So there's a lot of opportunities, using them in everyday tasks. I always look at it, what is it I have today, and is like my best friend is Claude. I'm sorry. Is Claude gonna help me today? And sometimes I actually run different LLMs to kind of like see the difference that I get from them, and then see who has the best answer for me, and then of course don't take everything they take and do my own spin. All right, so we talked about the risk of bias and equity. We talked about the risk of governance. We talked about the risk of data and trust. And so I don't want to dwell too much on that because we already discussed it. But your most precious assets is the data about your stakeholders that you're engaging with, and the ones that you want to bring into the fold so that they rub shoulders with you and lock arms. And so you want to make sure that those are protected, but that you're personalizing your communication and engagement for them with the AI tools that you have. All right. And this is also portrayed in a recent study from the Center for Effective Philanthropy. As you can see that I'm just going to look at nonprofits, which is the light blue section here. You can see 45% have a few staff members trained on AI, and 70% still no staff members, and then only 6% have would say that all of their staff members are trained on AI. And I would urge you to increase that percentage, like from everyone in the room, and there's free training opportunities from most of these AI tools. Of course, they will try to sell you a subscription afterwards, but you should make your choice wisely and just go with the one that is best suited for your organization and use the free resources that they offer without entering any confidential data. All right, and then so there's 3 drivers of adoptions, which is internal communications, also operations, driving innovation culture. So is there a way that you can use these AI tools and totally rethink your stakeholder engagement? That could be like creating new types of materials, content, or way to engage. Is it that maybe if the infrastructure is not there, there may be other channels of communication that you can use, maybe texting or WhatsApp groups or other ideas that you could leverage to it? And then really the scaling comes from A, yes, it's a budget question, and then B, it's also a creativity question, right? That you can like rethink the processes and engagement tools. And it could be if you look at the different examples that we have later, so from just changing content to, there's an example from the UN World Food Program where they actually use AI and machine learning to develop a system that refugees can scan their iris, and that helps with food donation, and that kind of like alleviated the problem that they don't have any IDs or any forms of identification, so that ensure that they receive the food that they deserve. And then of course there's peer competition, although I want to talk more about collaboration today, because turning peer competition into collaboration is a much better strategy. All right, so when we look at what were the successful AI adoption strategies to date, that is really that the leadership buy-in, recognizing that AI is a driving force right now that is changing, everybody's environment at the moment, and really make it part of the business strategy. And then really weave AI into the operations and ensure, like, if you want to address that there is a bias, so ensure that that the risks of AI are also reflected in your mission and purpose. And if you use it, that you have the governance systems in place. Then the other thing is we talked a lot about tools, and we all have our favorite tools, but the strategy really comes first. So it's easy to follow into a tool and get attached to it, but really looking at your organization holistically and again, looking at training, I think that's a better way to approach it. And that's not easy because everything is changing so quickly. So we're all kind of like trying to learn as much as possible as, all the AI tools are evolving. So for example, today I'm using Allbirds shoes, I'm wearing them. And, it was a sustainable footwear company. That's why I bought them. But now they are an AI company. So I am actually wearing a historic artifact today. And then, have little pilot cases, test with some areas in the organization that are less risk-free, and then scale them out. And we already talked about embedding it really in ethics and governance. All right, this year.
Yeah, I think we're probably almost time, right? We're okay. So here are just some AI tools for nonprofits. So we've got general purpose, like you already talked about, Claude, ChatGPT. Perplexity is very good for research as well. And there's so many new things coming up, like Ask Anything, for instance. That's a new thing for those who are researchers, and Microsoft Copilot. And as Katja said, I think it's more, don't think of it, this is the tool ultimately, right? You need to know what are you using it for before you commit, but I guess just try it, right? And see what works for you. Then you've got for fundraising and donor management, you've got all these different platforms, grant writing, and then marketing and communications. One thing I want to stress, these are great tools, and it's well and good that you try it, but don't take the first output and put it out there, right? So for instance, I know a number of us use it for grant writing, right? Because you can put it in, you can say, okay, here's the RFP, this is the web, this is our, this is the link to our organization, write a grant for me, right? It might work first time, right? But But I see someone's shake. Agreed, right? So you have to make sure, look at it first. And I also tell my students, so I teach the social impact and performance measurement class where you look at program evaluation. There's promise there, promise. Because think of it, when you have so much data in terms of qualitative and quantitative, in theory and in practice, you can feed that to any of these. However, you cannot trust right away that the result is good. That's where you still need a human. You need the expert. You need the program, someone who actually knows that can look at the trends and like, wait a minute, something's off here, right? Because the reality with a lot of this technology, you have to train it. You know, you have to. And it's both learning for both us as users, like what are the best prompts, what are the best uses, but so for the machine, because that's what it is, right? So anyway, and then marketing and communications. And then these are just some examples, and these slides I'm assuming will be shared with you, have links, just wonderful examples of how really our sector has been using technology for some time now, but AI adoption as well. So you've got from Charity Water, where it's data-driven donor segmentation, digital storytelling, real-time impact dashboards. Even a few years ago, before the explosion of AI, and we talked about this in our ethics class ages ago, there are ethics issues too. Like if you suddenly have an avatar, for instance, not a real person, an AI-generated avatar that can pull the heartstrings, right? So this represents, there's even an ad, I think, in television about this. I am an AI generated generated image of all the children who are experiencing hunger. Very realistic, right? I'm digressing a little bit, but that goes to ethics. How comfortable are your organizations or are you as fundraisers using images like that? Or is that the future? Something to think about. But it's being used already, right? Real time. You've got the American Red Cross. You now can. There's a mobile app for those who want to donate blood, always a good thing. And other things here, program delivery services, crisis text line, with all, the calls for help, it can help with triaging. So there are a lot of other examples, and these are it just scans the surface. So it's already happening, and I think this is where our slide ends. Oh, here, moving forward, Katja. Yeah.
So we already had a little bit of a discussion of what your pain points are and what you're looking at, but we just wanted to end this talk by kind of like looking at AI from a double ends, like helping you to enhance your stakeholder engagement, helping you ultimately to achieve your goal, maybe more productively and evolve, but also ensuring the responsible use and access to AI, so that we talked a lot about the digital divide over the years, but now it really is the AI divide, and we want to close it and not contribute to it. And then there's another discussion about the energy use of AI as well, which would be for another time.
Thank you. There are, I imagine folks in the room have questions. There are a couple that came online just as we were talking. I didn't hear any conversation about using AI to create images of you as a superhero. That's what I do. Does that work? No? All right.
That should be our opening slide next time.
That's it, next time, yes. Yes, I'm going to do that at the next conference, right. Let's see. So one participant online said, 37 years old and AI saves me on average 3 to 4 hours of work every single week. Primarily, it helps me write emails that are high quality, which I then, of course, refine and make more my own voice. It also helps me sift through data very quickly to identify what are personal stories from my coalition that I need to lift up to elected officials. It also provides culturally competent translation for my multilingual coalition. So the question, how do you view the safety of using AI for nonprofits serving targeted groups by government or other groups such as trans, non-binary youth? Any thoughts?
Okay. I mean, congrats for using it so productively. So that's a really great use of AI, and I'm glad that you can save 4 to 5 hours a week to, which you, I'm sure, like focus on other work. I guess the core of that question is really where is that data that you're using housed, and is the tools that you're using, I assume that there are a paid version of it, so you just have to make sure that the data that you use in your in the LLMs of your choice, that it is not publicly or open. So I would just caution you on the types of LLMs that you're using, and it might also be worthwhile if you have a couple of different subscriptions to see whether you get different answers from the different tools that you're using, and compare that and identify whether you see any types of bias or gap that you see there. Yeah, it is really the data protection. I would make sure that the data is protected.
Any questions in the room? The couple will start here and come back.
I have 2 questions. One is there, how do nonprofits and foundations compare to the private sector with respect to AI adoption and fluency? So that's my first question. The second is there, I totally appreciate that organizations need to work on ethical use, guidance, policies, and all of that, but is there kind of an umbrella group that's also trying to like the whole thing about compilation images that are AI generated, like I feel like each of us could come up with a different stance, but like kind of uniform guidance would be helpful.
Yeah. For the first one, compared to the private sector, my assessment is that it is more on the lower adoption range at the moment, but that also has reasons, because there are costs associated with AI tools, and the budgets are very different, and it does require upskilling needs. So companies early on, started AI trainings. At least like I also work with large organizations, and AI training started early on and is still going on continuously. And then for your question, there are guidelines and frameworks, so we can send them afterwards, because I think that's a good point. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can look what's already out there and build onto it together.
In terms of resource, and Nina talked about this, right? Like our sector reaching out to the companies that produce this and making the argument. It's a win-win. But I'd also say foundations. I don't know if there are any foundation folks in the room, but this is where it's part of capacity building. So if we make the argument to the foundations to actually fund and help build our capacity and our knowledge. That's it.
Good morning. My name is Janet Rodriguez, and I'm the founder of So Harlem, and we incubate creative entrepreneurs. And I had a situation, I know you don't want to talk about energy, but this is a real issue for us. I work with a contractor who comes in every now and then to help our creative entrepreneurs work on understanding Google Suites, technology, etc. And when I broached the subject of AI, she gave me a mouthful about why she doesn't do AI, how it's harming our environment, that she would never teach that. So the few times I use it with tremendous guilt, regarding the environment. And I think we need to have a conversation about that.
I do think it's a very important point, and it's a conversation that is happening. And well, my personal idea was like, if we do a search on Claude or ChatGPT, that it kind of like tells us the carbon footprint that we created, similar to like when we travel. So maybe that might be a solution in the future to raise more the awareness that it is not an unlimited resource. While we have easily access to it, there is an implication of that use. So that is a very good point, and it will be reflected on your electricity bill, at this point. So, and even private sector companies are now more cautious in terms of like the budget that they're allocating because it is a cost. And so we all, whatever the resources that, the resource constraint that we have, energy is one of them. So I think we do need to have that conversation. And but I wouldn't use it as a hurdle not to use it. There's also a question about what is the energy source that you're using for it. So that's the same with sustainability, where some companies then moved more to clean energy sources and carbon offsets. So maybe we can approach it from that angle.
Any other question? Oh, a question here. Oh, here. By the way, we are the nonprofit management program, but within the School of Professional Studies, we do have a sustainability program. Just a shameless plug for Columbia here.
Hi, my name is Robin Kluber. I'm the director of the Ascension Church Food Pantry. We are a pantry that's run 100% by kids, and we try to keep the camera away from them because the impact that AI could do with taking pictures of our kids and turning them into something, not nice. Is there any way to shut off AI or protect your pictures or your information from AI? Whether it's ethical or electricity?
So kind of like, let's say, I guess the case would be someone comes to your food pantry, takes pictures of the kids and, didn't follow the guidelines and did that and then uploaded it in an LLM. So right now, I guess it would be, an infringement of the policy that you have, but getting these pictures, similar to what we have with Google, remove my images, this regulation is not there yet. So that would need to be an outreach then to that specific, if it's on, Cloud or somewhere, that would be a specific outreach then to that provider. So that is where actually regulation needs to happen. And I think that also what we've seen, like the limitation of use of social media to protect children, right? So it may go in a similar direction like that actually who's using it, will there be age restriction in the future, or with the content upload, will there be more restriction to protect vulnerable groups?
Two more quick questions.
Yes, I just wanted to add to the conversation, especially to the previous question. Like, I totally resonate, especially as someone from Memphis, Tennessee. I was so disappointed in the data center being built, but there is progress being made in the space. Like, in utilizing these tools, there are limits. Like, some of you may have noticed, or if you go play with these tools later on, you cannot use certain AI tools after a certain amount of time. You can only generate so much. And I think they're implementing that more as a way to like reduce the harm that it is causing on the environment. And to the protection piece, there are certain questions embedded in these tools that are inappropriate. And the chat is starting to catch up and realize that, and that comes with training too. So there is work being done in the space, and if you do decide to like subscribe to a tool, you can safeguard it in a way and across your platforms. So yeah.
There's a question here, yeah. Just as I move over there, because I also straddle the political and public policy spaces, I can tell you that one of the things that's affecting the midterms right now are the energy costs, right, that are exploding in a lot of communities, particularly in a state like Iowa, where energy costs have gone up 11%. And we're talking farmers, right? So when you layer that on top of the fertilizer costs because of everything that's happening around the world, everything is becoming unmanageable, and this doesn't help. So, yes.
I noticed in the presentation you brought up AI fluency, and there's a chart there. And I'm wondering exactly how we're defining AI fluency in that chart, or just generally, because I think one way of AI fluency might be like, hey, chat, what's the weather? And that's not necessarily fluent, though, right? So what's equally as fluent is maybe knowing not how to use it, or when to not use it, and when to use it. So I'm wondering maybe what you've been thinking about that, or like if there is some kind of like universal understanding of what fluency is, because then how do we achieve that?
Okay. So one of my other hats, I'm actually still writing my dissertation, and it's on global leadership competencies in the age of AI. And so a lot of the previous classification of global leadership competencies have not included AI as a skill. So I'm kind of like looking at that. And I agree, it is not just like having the tool downloaded and playing around with it. It's really like how to use it productively that supports your organization's mission in a responsible way. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Katya and Erwin. I appreciate your work here. One of the things that we really wanted to focus on today, and I'm so thankful that our full-time faculty member in the nonprofit management program, Erwin De Leon, who you heard from earlier, who has a lot of experience in this space, can talk to us about DEI in an era of political retrenchment. So I want to start the second part of our program today with, again, with Dr. De Leon.
Yay, DEI, fun time. So just to give you context and what my involvement with DEI. So I served as SPS's Chief Diversity Officer from 2021 to 2025, and I currently serve on the board of the LGBT Center here in New York. And last year I was with the Racial Equity Committee. So that is where I'm drawing my own experience, and obviously as a queer person of color, a lot of intersectionality there. And also, how do you deal with DEI as a manager or as a leader, right? So this is what I'm going to cover today. And so actually, before I start, give me one or two questions in your mind. I want to make sure I cover everything. My students know, sorry, I should stay here. My students know I tend to really have lots of slides, so I will probably have to skip through some. But are there any burning questions in the room right now?
How do you stay within your mission while also being realistic about this political retrenchment and what is sort of the negative buzz phrases or words that, you know, your board may say, you know, take that off of your website or whatever. Like, how do we stay within what our mission is, our goals are, the culture that we've created, but being, you know, practical that we are in a different era and it may be in our best interest to not be as overt about our mission, if that's the proper way to say that?
No, excellent question. And I think that's an issue faced not just by the nonprofit sector, but by the corporate sector as well. And ultimately, right, you have to stick to your mission. That's what we do. But I will discuss how different organizations are responding and while trying to keep to their mission. So we will cover that. Anyone else? Ari, I think you had a same question. Okay. You know, I'll just start off actually by answering. This is my simple answer, to be honest with you. So last January, you may recall it was January 21 thereabouts when the current administration and the current president issued a slew of executive orders, right? Among them anti-DEI, anti-LGBTQ, anti-everything for most of us. And that had actual impacts on our funding, right? So I guess I had a fortune, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be front and center in a way for two organizations. One as the Chief Diversity Officer for a school at Columbia, because Columbia never had, and now doesn't even have any, Chief Diversity Officer. So I represented the school. But then I sat on the board of the center. So, but what happened that week was that the executive committee was called in by email and didn't say what. We have to meet right now. And so I did, along with others, and what it was, because we were going to be asked as executive board members, are we going to join a litigation against the Trump administration? You know, meaning the center and 8 other LGBTQ orgs. What was amazing, oh, and by the way, this is just good management / leadership. The COO of the center came up with a 2-page risk management document. One for the organization, what that means for us, and on the backside, or well, it's a PDF. On the second page, what it means for us as board members, because our names are out there. They know where to find us. And as for the record, I mean, as CDO of SBS, I have been in New York Post and other things. So there's actual risk. But what was stunning was everyone on that meeting said, of course, this is what we do. This is our mission. So actually, my short answer, which will come to the end of it, is like we fight. Because this is our mission, right? Well, especially if it's ingrained in your mission, especially if you're serving people of color, communities of color, right? Or LGBTQ or other minoritized groups. Now, of course, we'll talk about that. There are many ways of doing it. But one key takeaway, one thing that has proven to work against the current administration for now is litigation. If you've been following all the different lawsuits, not just by the queer community, the immigrant community, and what, at best, it's kept the administration at bay. We got some funding back. Of course, we all know the good and the bad news. The good news is that our legal process takes a while before it gets to the Supreme Court. And of course, everyone's hoping for the midterms and the next presidential elections. But we know when it comes to the Supreme Court, good luck with that, right? Because one thing relevant to what we're discussing right now, the birthright issue, right? It's now, we'll know in July what the Supreme Court will decide on that. So anyway, but that's my, if I have one key takeaway, it's back to what the gentleman said back there. It's our mission, right? And the reality is, whatever you do, they will find a way if they want to get rid of any DEI initiative. So that's the end. Okay, questions? No. Let's go through my slides. The way I structured it is really starting, I can't help it. Okay, I will stay here. Like, what is DEI? I'll breeze through that, but what is the state of DEI right now? And I know most of you are aware of that, so we'll just go through slides quickly. You will get the slide deck. Number two, the why. Why are we doing this, right? And how to do it. So that's pretty much the framework of this session. So what's going on here? Oh, clicker, okay. There you go. What is DEI? So, you've seen some of the slides here, but the reason I put this up, right, there's definitions of diversity, equity, inclusion, and, the difference between equality and equity, and there you go, inclusion, and then there's obviously accessibility, there are acronyms such as JEDI, justice, and all that. But this is my point in this slide, is that each of us at different levels, as individuals, as organizations, and as a society, have different understandings and approaches to DEI, right? And also, the reason for the globe there with all the flags, DEI in the global context is very different. The idea of equity and inclusion, particularly equity, is a very Western concept, right? So in other parts of the world, really it's more diversity that we have, and really it's more gender diversity, never mind everything else, right? So I just want to, and I think the reason I'm spending time on this is I think a lot of the misunderstanding and everything that comes after that is because we come to this work or this reality with different understandings, even within our organizations, even in the LGBT center, right? Where you have, for instance, so as individuals here going to the organization, I have a star here because end of the day, this is a nonprofit management program and we're focusing on the organization, is that our experience at the center, particularly during, after the October 7 massacre, and all that, you have a predominantly BIPOC staff who wanted the center, who understood DI in a certain way, wanted the center to make certain statements or to come out and what have you, right? But then you have those in the board who might think differently. So I'm sharing all that one because it's public knowledge. I'm not sharing anything that's confidential, but that even within our organizations, you might have different understandings of what DEI and what should you prioritize. Is it the D, the E, or the I? And by the way, you cannot separate them. And I think that's the danger when people start changing the term DEI for convenience because we might forget why. And I'll go quickly through a history of that. So I just sort of put together this definition for the class of what because to me it is a practice, the practice of DEI in organizations, right? So it's the summation of activities and formal operational functions within an organization. So that's everything. from supplier from procurement to data to HR, obviously, right? But it's all the verticals, all your functions that focuses on supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion with the goal of rectifying organizational discrimination and inequities. So within our organizations, changing the culture, because that's really what we're doing here. It's cultural change. But one thing we should never forget, unfortunately, which I think is people are forgetting, is that it contributes to societal change. I have some slides about the history of affirmative action here in the US. And that's how it all started. It was social policy to correct inequities, right? I'm just a little reminder there. Okay, so what is the state of DI? I think we all know what's going on, right? So, what happened in 2023, the Supreme Court came out with its ruling around admissions. But one thing that happened there was that it was very limited. But out of fear of lawsuits and everything, people just either preemptively got rid of DEI or what have you, not just universities, even organizations. But my point here, it was very limited, even the ruling. But people don't look at it that way, right? Then what else happened? So then, as I said, January last year, all these executive orders, while they were mostly for the federal government, but that has spillover to nonprofits that contract with the government, right? Or receive money, like the LGBT Center. Guess what? We serve a lot of trans people. So bye-bye, right? So we got this, defending women from, it's you just have to laugh with the titles, right? Gender, ideology, extremism, all that. And then what else? So restoring equality of opportunity and meritocracy. And what else? So, this is a wonderful resource, by the way. I'm sure you all know about the National Council of Nonprofits, but they do have this in their website, where it gives you all the different executive orders and according to different categories, right? DEI, immigration, LGBTQ+, and it's a good resource. So you have that, right? Okay. So this is just quickly, let's look at the corporate retrenchment timeline, because our sector always follows the corporate sector. It's neither good nor bad, just is. That was part of the professionalization of our sector, right? We learned from the business sector. But so what happened in the corporate sector? We had the murder of George Floyd in 2020, 2021. So of course, everybody let's institutionalize DEI, we have to all this, right? But then even a year later, it was a quiet shift. Right? When I suppose organizations were realizing, corporations were realizing what it really took. And then 2023, the SCOTUS affirmative action ruling. So immediately, those who really weren't into it found a perfect excuse to, let's get out of this, right? 2024, public rollbacks became visible. And then finally, 2025, we've got the Trump presidency, right? So this is just an example of the corporate, just a timeline. So you have this. So, what were the resulting corporate behaviors, right? So, for instance, in 2024, when they started scrutinizing federal contracts, renaming DEI offices. So it even started as early as that, right? Neutral language. Then eventually, after Executive Order 2014-14151, program closures, compliance-driven dismantling. And then finally, you've got this activist shareholder campaign, so totally exit from indices, right? There was a time when corporations proudly said, we support everyone. But that's what I tell my students, though. Listen, that's the business sector. That's how corporations operate. It's about profit. Now, if they're able to do good, which they are, by the way, they provide jobs. So don't get me wrong. I'm not one of those, I'm anti-corporations. I think the reality is, without corporations, there wouldn't be jobs. There wouldn't be the economy. However, let us not fool ourselves into thinking or forgetting that corporations exist to make money. And if supporting DI doesn't make money anymore, well, bye-bye. Or supporting pride events, so just something to remember, right? So now let's look at our sector, what happened. So now let's remember, before even George Floyd, a lot of organizations already did it. We're talking mostly the organizations that serve community. You know what I mean? Like, remember that some organizations like, I won't name names, are still nonprofits. But the point is, it's part of our mission, right? So, but then after the murder of George Floyd and at the time, there was wonderful momentum. People really wanted to embrace, and you may recall that wasn't too long ago. That was 5 years ago, and we were so hopeful. Wow, is this really the time when America will finally change? Surprise. And then 2020, the year after, growth and institutionalization continues. The realities, for instance, at Columbia, as of 2019, so half of the schools at Columbia didn't even have a diversity officer or an office. Think of that, 2019. But after 2021, that was when I was asked to serve as Chief Diversity Officer. And that was an add-on as faculty. So then 2024, after the SCOTUS affirmative action ruling, funding shifts, quiet retrenchment, and then there you go, starting to change, right? So, these are just examples of what happens, right? So here you go, new equity offices, excitement, right? And then suddenly there were grant restrictions and people realized, oh bleep, if we stick to this, we'll lose funding. But to my point, if you're serving people that don't fit the white supremacist narrative, you're gonna lose your funding anyway. So why not fight back? So, and then in February 2025, this is the Chan Zuckerberg Institute dissolves its DEI team. Right? So think of it, the money and the power and all that. And then 2025, which to your point, like a lot of reframing and adaptation. And I totally understand why people are doing that, right? So that's what's happening. And I don't know if any of you saw this wonderful ProPublica interactive article, so I'm sure it's still out there, where it really looked at more than 1,000 organizations that have deleted words like this. Because there are many ways people do it. Either they totally change the words thinking that, oh, we won't talk about DEI anymore. We're going to talk about belonging or what have you. And I understand why they're doing that. But I have news for you all. People who are after DEI will find it. And this administration will not stop. So again, back to your missions. Oh, by the way, the opinions I express is purely my own and does not reflect, obviously, the university nor the programs. I'm surprised I still have my job considering how opinionated I am. Students in the room know. I mean, I am surprised I still have my job. But anyway, so here, yeah, Vaso? Oh, are you? Oh! Nice knowing you all. Good luck.
I'm
Okay.
just checking. I'm just putting
Okay, I still have my job? Okay. Maybe you can find me on LinkedIn after. Open for work. Open for work. Okay, what? So here are the different types of retrenchment, right? So one is symbolic retrenchment, which we've seen. Changes to language, visibility, or signaling, right? Without altering core practices or structures. And I think some people chose to do that, like totally got rid of diversity offices or officers, but say like assure people, no, we still believe in this. So it's more like quiet, we're still gonna do it, which is great, I understand. But the problem there is that's okay if you actually have folks who are committed to it in the organizations. Because as it is, there are folks who aren't. So if you don't have the policies and the procedures, and you get those middle managers, or particularly anyone who has the gatekeepers, that's it, right? But, okay, so this is one, symbolic retrenchment, right? Renaming DI offices to people and culture, withdrawing from public benchmarks like the Human Rights Campaign, Corporate Equality Index, etc., removing DI language. But what remains intact is that you have internal staff that does DEI. They might change the title of the person, which I've seen. They change the title, but it's implicit kind of wink, wink, your job still has to do with that. Right? There are informal practices, unwritten commitments. So that's one way, right? So why it matters, reduces external accountability, signals risk aversion without immediate operational change. Okay, so in other words, the work may still exist, but can no longer be seen or measured. You hope. The next thing is programmatic retrenchment. This is totally elimination or downsizing of DEI programs or initiatives, while the overall function still exists. So ending leadership diversity targets, cutting supplier diversity programs, discontinuing affinity group funding, or opening ERGs to everyone, which don't get me started on that. That'll take 30 minutes. If I have to explain to folks why ERGs, employee resource groups, are important, you got a lot of work to do. But happy to talk to anyone who wonders why are there ERGs. And then dropping diverse slate hiring requirements. So what remains intact would be a DI officer's staff, often smaller, general inclusion training, just general, like, in HR. So DI still exists, but only in low-cost, low-risk forms. And then finally, you've got structural retrenchment, so elimination of DI as an institutional function, so closing DI office. So as you can see, it's a range of action, right? So in this case, totally just getting rid of anything DI, right? So to my knowledge right now, there isn't one diversity officer at Columbia University. Correct me if I'm wrong. Because a number of us were around a year ago, and I don't know if there's still anyone who actually even has that title right now. So what remains intact? Generic compliance language because it's legal, broad culture or belonging rhetoric. So why it matters? DI loses autonomy, authority, and budget, makes equity work discretionary rather than strategic. So the institution no longer treats equity as a distinct responsibility. So then here you go. Another one is a legal compliance-driven retrenchment. So you're worried about the legal, regulatory, or contracting risks. So it's sort of related to the last one. And then, I didn't know see what I mean? Like I have a lot of slides. Then you have quiet retrenchment. It overlaps, right? So nothing was officially ended, so nothing can be officially defended. So anyway, so let's just talk about, this just gives you an example. I think this is very important because it shows you, like, if you choose a certain kind of retrenchment, what is it, the visibility, what's its impact, and what's its reversibility? Because as you know, the Supreme Court ruled, like, actually, guess what? You can use DEI at universities. But guess what? Too late now. Because particularly those, for instance, who just change everything, it'll be very hard to reverse what you've done. So now what? Will we bring back diversity officers? So just something to consider. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of companies and nonprofits were either preemptive or just acted out. And I get it, right? Fear of lawsuits. I get it. Particularly if you're a small nonprofit or what. But some organizations can withstand, right? And you've seen how different organizations have reacted. Some just sort of like, okay, fine. And some fought. So it goes back, I think, to the morality of it all as an organization. Okay, so here you go. Oops. Wait, I'm moving fast. Oh dear, what am I doing? Hello. Oh dear, how are you doing? Okay, this is really, how do I go back here? Sorry, I'm already going really fast. Okay, can you go back to, oh wow, this is fun. More. Okay, there, why, now move forward. Oh, there, stop. Thank you. I feel like I'm back in the classroom where the nice thing is when you get to this certain age, I can act like that absent-minded professor, which sadly I have. Okay, never mind, I've been teaching online since before 2020 because SPS was really ahead of the game. But anyway, my point here, look, this was from January this year. Trump admin drops court appeal blocking anti-DI efforts against universities' K-12 schools. But now, all those offices are gone. Everything's changed. So are universities and schools and nonprofits and corporations going to go back now? I think we know what the answer is. No? Okay, let's go on. So why DEI? Just quickly, right? So I think just a reminder. So there are business arguments. That's the thing. It's already been proven. The data's been there. It's out there. It actually improves representation opportunity. It enhances organization. We're talking about decades, This is already that social science, quantitative data exists. So even forgetting the moral argument for it, the business argument is there, right? So there are business arguments. Now, there are business arguments against, right? You've probably heard about it, concerns about meritocracy, because, in America, it really works. Perceived, oh gosh, thank God I'm naturalized. Perceived division or backlash. So these are some arguments, business arguments against, right? But I go back to this, the moral arguments for practicing DEI, especially again for our sector, especially again for the work that we're doing, right? So it's about fairness and justice. It's about basic fundamental human dignity. It's about ethical leadership. It's social ethics. So, and moral versus business case. So morality can justify DEI even when financial benefits are debated. Because one thing that I do tell my students, and it's obvious, there is a cost to doing DEI, actual cost, money, hours, etc. But it's already been proven that ROI makes up for that, return on investments, right? But also sometimes, as for those of you who work particularly with vulnerable populations, it costs a lot. But it's worth it, isn't it? Right? Like, it's not always about efficiency or efficiency. It's about doing what's right. All right. So I always have this slide because I just want people to remember why do we find ourselves in this situation in the U.S. and globally? Why are we talking about DEI or equity or inclusion? Because look at U.S. history. Right? Why are we becoming just look at the history, from colonization to slavery, to the annexation of Mexico, right? To the annexation of the Philippines, to the gold rush that brought in a lot of Chinese immigrants, but thank God, finally they're being recognized, because until the past 10 years, you never saw pictures of the Chinese laborers who died to build the Intercontinental Railroad. You've got mass migration from Europe. You've got the Bracero program, which, by the way, people forget that even since 1942, we have been importing Mexican labor. And at different points, depending on what the policy was, it was accepted, right? And then you've got the 1965 Immigration Act, which opened the doors to other countries globally. So it was because of, and then this is just a snapshot of, what are the census data? And this is, here I use ChatGPT. What is the predicted racial demographics in the US? But the point is that we're fast, as you know, we're becoming a majority-minority nation, which kind of explains, too, in short time, right, all the changes, why the pushback. But the reality, this is the reality, and we're becoming this because of US history. US colonization, US import of labor, enslavement. This is why we're doing this. But that also goes to other countries, for other countries that colonized. So when people, I always say, whether this is in Britain or elsewhere in Europe, if you're all wondering why us immigrants are here, well, colonization. I wouldn't be here if the US didn't annex the Philippines or bought the Philippines from Spain, right? Same thing for other immigrant groups. So let's be honest about why we're here. Now, but it doesn't end there. But this is just a quick, and by the way, the slides will have all the sources and more history about this. But, the history, who decides who is American, who gets to participate, right? From 1865 to the 13th Amendment to the Chinese inclusion. So the thumbs up are the ones that actually ruled in favor of immigrants or non-whites, right? So anyway, that's just a bit of history here. And then, of course, now we have this. Again, right? And I said we will find out in July what the ruling of the Supreme Court is. Now remember, it's in our Constitution. So which Constitution are we reading at? It's sort of like which Bible, right? Okay, so now let's go into the actual public policy, right? So this all started with affirmative action, right? From civil rights legislation to President Kennedy signing Executive Order 10925, which asked government contractors, so it's the reverse. What Trump is doing is the reverse of what Kennedy said. take affirmative action to ensure that applicants are employed and employees are treated during employment without regard to their race, creed, color, or national origin. So it was public policy. Why? Because then government, or Americans for the most part, realized we were and are living in a highly inequitable society, and it needs to be fixed, and that's the role of government. So, this didn't come from corporations or nonprofits. It was actual public policy. So you've got the Civil Rights Act and some other things that happened, right? So my point here, these initiatives have one shared common goal: equitable treatment for marginalized groups in the workplace. So let's not forget the history, because people are forgetting, like, how did this all start? It goes way back from the founding to actual government policy. So then when after Reagan took over, starting in the 80s, it then moved back, so there's a back and forth, retrenchment, if you will, slight retrenchment around this. So, okay, so that's a quick history, but I'm sharing that because for me, that makes the argument why. Why are we even talking about this? Why are we having these arguments? Right, okay, now let's talk about how to practice DEI. So there are a lot of frameworks out there. So if you've been to management or leadership school, we all have some sort of frameworks. This is one thing I offered the students for my DEI class, right? It's really, I call it the affirmative awareness to action to amplification framework, where you always start at the top, awareness. Being aware of where is your organization exactly when it comes to this work. And that means data gathering, meaning the basics, of course, demographics, but beyond that, what are the attitudes of your people, right? So you've got awareness. Where are we starting? What are the gaps? Where do we need to do work? And then you've got action, which includes strategic planning, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, and learning. So you act on what you found, and then finally you amplify your work within the organization and outside. Because normally we forget, even just in channel communications, it's always outward facing. Remember, communication also has to be internal. And in this case, you need that. So your team members know, why are we doing this, right? Okay. So I didn't know I had that. Okay, but so there you go. So you got action, organizational change, strategy, implementation. So there's an evaluation loop. So it's about sustainability. And then there you go. Talked about this. So boom, there you go. So you'll have this slide. Okay, so it's the awareness to action to amplification framework. And so for this class, part of the final presentation, student actually says, so where is your organization at this point? Is it at the awareness point, or are you already at the action point, right? 10 minutes, or I should be done? Okay, 10 minutes, okay. So I will leave. Oh, so this is, I'm almost done, so we'll have some time for questions. So I just wanted to put this, like, during times of crisis, right, the nonprofit sector functions as a system substitute, a moral authority in organizing infrastructure. It absorbs risk, restores dignity, and sustains communities when states and markets fail, right? Withdraw or turn hostile. I think all that right now. So during times of crisis, the nonprofit sector resists. That's what we do. Even when you think of the people we serve, in a capitalist society, we are the ones who choose to serve these communities. So now let's talk about this, like how actually, right? So nonprofit resistance. So where we move from service providers to actually political actors under pressure, right? So this would be intentional action to defend our communities, rights, resources, civic space. Again, I have it here. This is nothing new. Think back, who helped organize and lead the civil rights movements? Our community organizations. Of course, there were leaders, right? And the nonprofits, the HIV/AIDS activism, the anti-war movement, the sanctuary movement, you name it, climate. Our sector was part of the resistance, right? So, and there are 4 modes. And by the way, I just don't mean like outright in-your-face resistance. You've got advocacy and policy resistance, right? Changing the laws. You've got service as resistance, because the reality is not everyone can actually be out in the streets or, pounding the halls of Congress, because you have work to do. And sometimes choosing to do that work is resistance. So I think back of the LGBT Center, hell no. We're going to serve our trans siblings, right? So then you've got narrative and cultural resistance, where you're doing the work that the rest of the world or our country thinks it's not worth doing, or serving people who should have worked hard anyway, who should be pulling themselves by the bootstraps. Never mind, they never had boots in the first place because they were creating boots for everyone else. And then coalition and solidarity resistance. So it's not just, there are many ways, right? And the realities in social movements, everyone has a role. So you don't have to be necessarily filing lawsuits. Even just by doing your work, serving people who might risk your funding, that's resistance, right? So, so you got legal resistance, pattern. So these are the ways people have been fighting: institutional shielding, quiet resistance, public narrative battles, like saying what DI is equity, it's saying that it's even meritus, right? And selective silence. And again, it's a choice, it's an option. And sometimes, and I do understand. So there are many ways to resist, right? These are the different patterns I see out there. Oh, and there you go, thank you. That's me.
Thank you, Erwin. Anybody in the room have questions?
Thank you for this presentation. I'm Dominique Jones, Executive Director of Global Kids. And I appreciate the last slide specifically in terms of resistance. I guess I have an organization that we're generationally diverse a bit. And, but most of our staff kind of reflect who we serve ultimately. But post 2021 to now, I think many of my staff have been looking at this idea of, we need to be vocal. We're global kids. We should be talking about this and it's human rights. And being the lead spokesperson, I'm always challenged with that a bit because, I'm a Black woman in this context, right? Right. How do you work to bridge kind of some of that divide within the organization? Sure. I think your last slide that talked about silent, that is a resistance strategy. And I talk about being stealth. Yeah. Yes. But, some of my younger staff don't get that. And they want us to be up front.
Okay, I think, I'll borrow from the playbook of Dr. Carla Smith. She's the CEO of the LGBT Center, because she faced this, as I alluded to earlier, where, there are a number, this right after, what happened on October 7. So the younger staff member, mostly BIPOC, wanted the center to come out with a statement, a pro-Palestinian statement. And so not everyone is on board, particularly members of the board. But Carla, Dr. Smith, pointed out, look, she went back to what is our mission here. Our mission is to serve all LGBTQ individuals. So she doesn't want to make a stance. And what if there's an Israeli or Jewish queer person who doesn't feel safe in the center? Right? So I think in this case, number one, it's going back to your mission. And is it your job to come up with statements? I mean, that's a decision that has to be made by the board and the leadership. That's number one. And she realized, no, that is not her job. But because of that, because there wasn't a policy, so now there's a policy. So we learn, right? Number two, actually having discussions, education with everyone, with staff that were pro-Palestine and those who weren't, right? So it's education, but doesn't mean, it's just good leadership, where, remembering what you're here for, but also having honest conversations. So a lot of education, a lot of training. And I get it, right? Like, I was 21, and if I could think back, my 20-something would probably look at me and like, you're such a cop-out, right? Guess what? That's gonna happen, you all, for the young ones. Anyone else?
Hi, Dominic Boyce, Manhattan County Board 10. Quick question, given your presentation with regard to the government pullback, the retrenchment, my question is about your donor base, particularly as individuals as well as corporate donors. But as an individual, how can, in this era, organizations, particularly tax-exempt organizations, sustain that donor base when we as individual donors and other donors see what's going on, and for a fact, you're going to have people that say, I will never donate to this organization again. I will never donate to Columbia University because of what happened. I will never donate because there's a anti-Jewish bias or anti-Palestine bias. Right. And you're going to lose some of your base. So how can organizations in this era be targeted in terms of that donor base so that they can continue to sustain their programs? Because that's a real question in this era.
You're spot on, and that's happened, and we saw that at the center. But I think what we also saw was that suddenly there were those precisely because they realized, not just the center, when I think of NPR, I think it was the news where they just got this huge donation, right? Tens of millions. I just saw this in the news. Because there will be people who understand the dangerous times we're living in, and who, if they really believe in your mission, and number two, also see the good work you do, and you say it correctly. So this is where fundraising and communications come in. Well, we were surprised. I'll just speak from the center. I can't speak for all organizations, but I think those elements, you will get people who might not even have thought of giving, but now, no, I'm going to give. But that might be like, some of us in the sector called it, in the first Trump administration, the Trump bump, right? You all remember that? And we remember this year, the Trump bump wasn't that big, right? So my point being, but with the center, what happened though, after January, we actually surpassed our fundraising. But then this is now where fundraising management comes in, because then our team put in a place where, okay, how can we sustain this knowing that this is just a bump, right? How do you keep these new folks who are supporting you? But it's also your message, right? And I think another thing, the reality though, I was just talking with Dr. Sigri about this, and a number of us are thinking, sadly, with what we're seeing, in the next few years, our sector will contract. It just is, right? Because of the funding that's gone, number one. Number two, the rise of hybrid organizations. So we're in a different era right now. So I think this is where also working in coalitions or working together as organizations. I know the reality is they're competitors. You're competing for the same money. But this is where you sort of coordinate. Okay, maybe you take over this thing. So there are ways around it.
If I can, moderator's privilege here to just add a point to that. The other day, when I was at that Urban League event, I talked about this issue because you talked about the SCOTUS decision on affirmative action at schools. I went to Cornell undergrad. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, before the SCOTUS decision, the black enrollment at Cornell was somewhere around 8%. Post SCOTUS, it's under 5%. Columbia and Harvard have had the biggest decreases in black student population. Now, here, just being here on this campus, you could say that's terrible. The other side of it is it actually has contributed to the significant increase in enrollment and support for HBCUs, which is a fantastic thing. Spelman, Norfolk State, right? Which is fantastic, right? But we also have to think about what else is happening, because that's great. But by the way, there's money for HBCUs being pulled back too, right? So it's almost like folks like us are being pushed into spaces that are consistently not being funded properly. Right, so you're being pushed one place and the next place and the next place, seemingly to find some support, but then that support almost always ends up falling short. So that's why there has to be some real significant intentionality around, saying that I believe in this work and I'm going to be intentional about supporting this person and this person and this person, or this organization and that organization. So to support our forward movement in this program, I'll do two more very quick questions. I'll start back and then we'll end. Sorry.
Hi, that's a great presentation. My name is Denise Ochola, and I am a nonprofit and public health consultant, in part because my field has contracted, and so finding a job in public health has been challenging. But I'm curious what you've seen for folks whose careers are DEI, whether because it's their job titles or because, say, they're a public health doctoral student whose research is focused on, equity in different areas, and and I wrote this down. So people who are visible minorities, like we've seen Black women across sectors, business, nonprofit, whatever, the unemployment numbers now are startling, right? And so that hireability, and of course there are skills that you can pivot into like different roles. So just because you're a DEI officer at one place, it doesn't mean you can't do another job, but your job title says DEI on your resume, or your expertise is deep into inclusion. So just wondering your thoughts on that.
Yes. No, I sadly, I know that full well just from my colleagues who, and some who've been doing this work for 20, 30 years, right? And suddenly, and as we both know, who suffered the most just with the DI work? Who was expected to carry the DI work, and now who were the first one to let go? Black women. So unfortunately, there aren't a lot of jobs to be had. But as your point that, but there are a lot of skills. So I think it just goes back to remarketing yourself, rebranding, right? But I really don't know how to respond because it's very true, and unfortunately I do have good friends who are caught in that situation, unfortunately. Yeah.
This is collaborative space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it was for those who have it on their
Resume.
It's in their title.
Or 30 years of expertise in the
Yeah.
area. Just for someone who is, like, their career has been DEI. The pivoting, when the jobs aren't there, when the funding isn't there for the organizations focused on this line of work. Just curious what people have seen or experienced.
Actually, I do, while people are thinking, I do think one thing to remember is like, you were doing, so when I think of my friends, they were doing DEI work in a certain context. So whether it's higher ed or in corporate, or most likely in HR. So maybe this is where a little bit of scrubbing or changing the titles, but there is that work, higher ed, student service, right? Or working with faculty. So yeah, I think that's one way. Okay, you focus more on the institutions that you worked on and the type of work you did. Type, not the title of the work. Anyway.
Maybe. Well, finish with Nancy.
Hi.
Hi.
We know each other.
We know. I'm Nancy Martin for others. So thank you. That was just incredibly informative and so much in there to think about. You part of your presentation talked about the private sector as profit driven, and I think also, and we've heard this from a lot of speakers, in comparison, the nonprofit sector is values driven, mission driven. Right. That's a really, and so I'm just curious your thoughts about how we, each of our organizations is making its own decisions about how to support DEI in all the ways that we can continue to do so, and what that looks like for each organization. What about as a sector? Is there maybe a bigger role for the sector as promoting, a values-driven way of operating that we should also be considering locking arms, as Ari was saying, to, maybe do more together?
The way I'll answer this is this way. The nonprofit sector as it stands is too big, and I really think we need to disaggregate, because you have to understand that a lot of nonprofits won't be for DEI. So, that not all nonprofits are necessarily going to be pro-DEI, right? Because I'm talking about more conservative nonprofits, right? Those who are actually advocating, against, maybe not against DEI, but less intervention or whatever. So it's just a reminder that our sector is not a monolith in terms of size, in terms of mission, in terms of politics, if you will. So that's why it's going to be really hard. Right now, that's why I don't know if there's necessarily, however, this is where for those of you, and imagine a lot like who are in the social services, that's where I think that would make more sense. Education, I don't know. Right? But not as a whole sector, in my opinion. It's just too large to expect the entire sector to move lockstep. But by sector, yes.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you again, Professor. We have two more speakers for you this afternoon. I want to make sure that you hear from another student of ours, Xavier Peixoto. Yes. Right. Who will talk about the currency of contribution, connection, and engagement. And then after that will be our final speaker, Brother John L. Doris. Xavier.
First of all, hi everyone. Thank you for this opportunity and thank you for listening to me, my presentation. As Professor Michael said, I'm Xavier Peixoto. I'm a student in the nonprofit management program, and you can find me at xavierpeixoto.com. There's my shameless plug right away. And I work in higher education. So before I start, I wanted to share a little bit about where this concept came, the currency of contribution, connection, and engagement. A few years ago, working in higher education, I started noticing something. Some of the most impactful people in our communities weren't the ones with the highest GPAs or the biggest titles. They were the ones who showed up. They mentor others, they built connection, they stayed engaged. And yet, none of that was actually formally recognized. That's when this idea started to form. And then I started a nonprofit management program. And the idea really started taking shape. And that's when I also started to notice most of our systems are built around transactions. You complete a task, you get a grade. You do a job, you get paid. You donate, you get a receipt. But communities don't thrive on transactions. They thrive on relationships. And relationships are built through contribution, connection, and engagement. The very things we don't measure well, or sometimes we don't measure at all. Sorry if I'm going through this too fast. And that's also what I noticed. Most of our systems, that's not it. This isn't just a higher education issue. Across systems, we struggle with the same challenge. How do we keep people engaged over time? And we know engagement matters. In one study, students who experience a stronger sense of belonging were 10% more likely to stay after 1 year, and still 9% more likely after 2 years, especially among first-generation and marginalized students. That's not a small shift. That's the difference between staying and leaving. So the question became, what if contribution, connection, and engagement were treated like a form of currency? Because when something has value, people invest in it. And when people feel like they belong, they decide to stay. This shifts us from a transactional model to a relationship-based ecosystem where contribution builds trust, connection builds community, and engagement builds continuity. And instead of one-time interactions, we create ongoing participation across a person's entire life cycle. Let's imagine this in practice. A high school student contributes, interacts, participates, and that value doesn't leave them, it actually follows them. In college, they continue to engage, to be part of this new community they are a part of, to continue moving, not starting over, but building forward. As alumni, they mentor others, they give advice, they're part of their bigger community. And as professionals, they give back to these communities that we talked about and to their institutions. Through who? Through nonprofits. Now you don't just have participants, you have a connected ecosystem. For organizations, this changes everything. Right now, many nonprofits struggle with retention. On average, only about 65% of volunteers stay year to year, and most remain involved for less than 3 years. But here's what's interesting. Volunteers who build multiple social connections within an organization are 27% more likely to stay. Connection drives retention, not just opportunity, but actual relationship. And this is the idea behind my presentation, a way to help schools, nonprofits, and community organizations recognize contribution, strengthen connection, and sustain engagement across the entire life cycle of a person's journey, because everything is connected. We sometimes forget that. Because when you build real community, everything starts to connect. Research shows that 87% of volunteers also become donors, and have say volunteering actually leads them to give more. So this isn't just about engagement. It's about building a system where participation leads to deeper commitment, where people don't just show up, they invest. So we want stronger organizations. If we want more engaged students, alumni, and communities, we have to rethink what we value, because when contribution is recognized, when connection is intentional, when engagement is sustained, people don't just participate, they belong. And when people feel like they belong, they stay. So I would like to invite you to look outside your buildings, look at that local coffee shop, the flower shop, the food mart, the food cart, every single business outside of you, all the local businesses, they're part of your community and you're part of theirs. And I hope to be the founder of the startup that helps you connect with them. So thank you for your time and for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Xavier. I have the honor of introducing a really strong leader in the community. He will help close out our 2 days of conversation and collaboration. I wanted to bring up John Aldaris. He is the CEO of StartCare, Inc., and was previously the commissioner of New York City Department of Small Business Services, and was the founding executive director of the New York City Mayor's Office of Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprises. Today, we will hear from him about direct service to systems change, scaling impact through strategic partnerships. All right, brother.
Good afternoon. All right, I gotta find a place to put this down here. Yeah, so I'm the last guy before you all get out of here. And it's like it's two places as a speaker you don't want to be. You don't want to be before lunch. You don't want to be the last guy before you go home, right? But I see lunch was ongoing there, so you guys were good. I do have some real thoughts as I woke up this morning at 3 o'clock, and I said, I wanted to shift this presentation a little bit, talk about a couple other things. So please bear with me as I kind of go through some of my notes on this, because I think it's important as we consider the work that we all do here, and I think what a lot of us who are on the ground are experiencing, and some of what we think is needed. So thank you, Basil, for that introduction. Certainly a privilege to be here. I just always like to, because I always like to give homage to our leader, our founder, Dr. Benny Prim, who founded this organization some 57 years ago. We happen to be the largest and oldest Black-founded organization of our kind, providing mental health, addiction services, biomedical research in the country. And so we are, always want to give him the credit for the foresight he had to address these issues when he had Black and brown soldiers coming home from Vietnam, and he was an anesthesiologist in Harlem Hospital and stepped out to really do something about it. And really, I think our topic today is really a testament to his work, because what he did was systems change. But it started by providing direct services and ultimately transformed the way mental health, addiction, integrated care, comprehensive care models are done all across the world now, because we pioneered it right here in the city of New York. So just wanted to do that. That's where we are. We're in 3 boroughs, and that's the services we provide. And I'm going to go through that. So my kind of what I have to do today is, like I said, trying to think about how those who are providing direct services, how many provide direct services? Okay, all right, good. Wonderful, thank you. How we can position ourselves to make systemic change. And ultimately, one of the components of how we do that is through our partnerships. And I will give on the presentation some examples of how we're doing it, But I did wanted to start with sort of going through some of my thoughts here around direct services to system change. So first, when we think about the changes that we are experiencing as a healthcare organization, some things are very, troubling to us because we had to take a minute to step back with all that's going on in society in these difficult times. That those who are on the ground, we're dealing with this reality of policy changes and shifts in thoughts around what it means to provide services and to whom deserve the service and so forth and so on. We have to struggle with that because there are thousands of people who show up to our door every day. We are what I call the safety net of the safety nets. And so the individuals that we serve need us, and if they don't have us, they're not going into the hospital systems, they're not going into New York City hospital systems, they're not going to find jobs elsewhere or job training elsewhere because they have this underlying challenge of being, going through addiction or some sort of physical ailment that carries, or mental stigma, that carries this level of stigma that is preventative. So, for us, we provide this direct service. And so when you think about OTPs, those out treatment programs, a lot has happened in the last couple of years that's forced us to kind of tackle this systems issue. One is that policy has made it difficult. We have new technology. We have advancements in medication that we provide. That some groups are more, easily for them to sort of adjust to that, while other groups are not. We're seeing that. And then also new, what I call regulations that redefine patient care altogether while giving autonomy to patients and agency to patients, right? We, as I always say we're a hospital, right? We're a smaller hospital system because that's what we are. All of the regulatory licensure that hospitals have, we have, so we are that, right? We provide all types of care. But when you think about what that looks like for us, providing that agency also allows the individuals who are coming for care, which we agree with, allows them to do and engage in, we don't want the care. Right before were mandated somewhat to get the care, but we don't want this type of care. We want this type of care. So what does that do? When you're running a nonprofit that is also healthcare focused, there's all types of realities that kick in, right? One of those realities are, I need the same nurse to do this thing and this thing. If the nurse only does this thing, then I'm only getting reimbursed for this thing, but I need the nurse to do actually all these things because that individual needs all these things. But if the individual can elect not to have certain things or services, it also presents not only a patient care challenge, but also how are we going to actually keep this nurse that I need? Particularly when there are wonderful other institutions and organizations and larger systems who are providing care as well. So these changes, I think, are important for us to consider. And the regulatory changes, the financial disruption, I pause to say this, but I think it's true, and I heard a little bit of it earlier, what I call philanthropy's anemic and antiquated response to the current challenges that we have. And I wish I could have given a talk on that, because if you're on the other side of it as a nonprofit, you see the challenges that we're seeing right now with philanthropy. Philanthropy, in my view, is very backwards looking in this time. I don't know what your experiences are, but I can tell you our experience. It's very challenging, and to raise money and so forth and so on, but also to see how they're perceiving the current challenge and crises and what they're doing to actually address it. And so, when I kind of think about direct services to system change, there is a couple things I just want to run through. Number one, we need to reimagine, reframe, and redefine nonprofits in this time. I think that is critical. We cannot continue to do what we are currently doing. The current system does not support a sustainable ecosystem. It does not. And again, we're a 57-year-old nonprofit. I'm telling you from experience, and we've kind of went through the journey of it all. So we need to reimagine, we need to reframe, and we need to redefine, nonprofits ourselves. And in my view, to provide ourselves as more so as system change agents. Systems change agents. When you provide a direct service, you solve a problem for people, right? We're solving a problem for people. When you have system change, you change the conditions that cause the problem to begin with. And that's what I'm really interested in as well, because at some point we've got to change the problem. And yes, that's great. We are addressing your issue. But if someone walks into one of our clinics and sites and suffer from addiction, and they don't have a place to go to store their medication when I give it to them, guess what? They literally have to come back and see me every single day. So I take away agency from that individual because they have no housing. We serve 35 to 40% homeless and or housing challenged individuals. So how do we address that? We have to address the systemic issues that are causing people to walk into our doors in the first place. So I say reimagine. Reimagine, organizations should rethink their missions, seek to expand their reach, not just to ensure sustainability, but because the moment requires it. There is work to be done within the organizations themselves to assess their effectiveness in their current structure. At our organization, when I walked in the door, I asked the organization, what are we doing, to address what we call the social determinants of health? They're actually causing people to walk into our doors, and nobody had an answer. So I posed the question that we need to look at our mission, and we need to revamp our mission. We need to change. We need to reimagine our mission. And we did that, and guess what? How long it took? 2 months? 6 months? A year? Come on, y'all. Don't make me. Now I'm a minister too. Don't make me start with this call back now. Come on, y'all. I know we're rounding up. Trust me, I'm going somewhere with this. Thank you. 2 years. 2 years for a yes. And by the way, once I got the yes, I had to go back to the state regulatory agencies, and you have to go through another half a year or a year process in actually legally changing all your so in that whole process, it's time, it's resources, it's money, but it's also a strategic plan that is delayed because we can't implement the way we need to because of those structural barriers. So direct service to system change to me means that we've got to reimagine, but not only reimagine, reframe. We need to reframe. And I think that's one of the things that is really troubling in this time. We need to leverage the proximity that we have to the issues that we're trying to solve. We are direct service providers. We are near to the problem. We have to change that construct and reframe it in such a way that we form our systems change through that narrative that speaks to, I'm closest to this problem. I understand what the issues are. All right, let me hurry. Nonprofits should also reframe our direct services as intelligence for system-wide change, not just a readout on how many people we serve or impact. We have the real-life world data that we can leverage to effectuate that change. We see the patterns, where the need is, we know the points of failure in the system, and we actually know what works. This intelligence is significant and critical to systems change because we have the evidence. Man, I wish I was talking about DEI today, because you got me. That's a big part of my work, my work history, and I was so excited to hear it being brought up in the way that it's being brought up. So really appreciate that, Professor. But that's it right here. The intelligence is significant and critical to systems change. Now, for this transition to happen, while not abandoning the direct service model, we need to turn our intelligence into influence. We got to turn what we know as direct service providers into influence in the system for system change. At Start Care, we had to do that. We've worked to change city procurement, state laws, healthcare policy, accountability on where the insurance providers are, partnering with hospital systems, changing regulations, and building strong advocacy coalitions. And then lastly, around this reframing and reimagining is redefining. And so how do we define success? We have to redefine that, right? Our metrics, what is our metrics? And like I said, a lot of times our metrics are people served, the demographics of people who serve, the quality and experience of those folks that they have with us. For us, we have annual patient surveys. Are you guys, do you like us? You don't like us? Do we, you like the way we talk to you? You like the care we provide? Those things are great. But when we think about, sort of systems change, you have to look at maybe the number of policies that we change, right? Or the policies that we influence. Other organizations and institutions that we are working with, and what's their model? Are they adopting what we are doing, right? And so that's driving the system change part of it. So I can tell you from not only now what we're doing on the healthcare side and advocacy, which we'll jump to in a minute, but also my previous life, as was mentioned. One of the things that why I like to work in government is that one change can affect millions of people. And I took that very seriously. So my whole work around supporting small businesses or minority women-owned businesses, et cetera, in the state, in the corporate sector, in the city, it was always about, can we change a policy or something that can ultimately impact the organization, but not that organization only, but the entire structure and system to drive us to where we need to go. All right, so second half of this. The scaling impact through strategic partnerships. All that I've said cannot be done in a vacuum. Collaboration is necessary in this moment in time. We cannot do this work alone, okay? So scaling impact through strategic partnership is about building relationships and understanding how to leverage those relationships to reach your goal. Partnerships should multiply what you already do and fill the gaps that you have. It's great to have partners, but if that partner is not adding value to you to scale or to do something else where you have a gap, then I think that is not useful to the organization. Systems level impact requires institutional allies as well. Government, large corporations, institutions, something I've been working on for half my career called anchor strategies, where large institutions who are anchors in the community work with smaller institutions and organizations to actually effectuate change. I've done that at a state level, city level, and that's something that is very important. And lastly, develop sustainable partnerships by building ecosystems, not one-off partnerships that only give temporary boost while ecosystems create compounding impact. So here, the slide you all been watching, waiting for me to get to, this is Start Care, the way that we sort of do the work that we do. At Start Care, we develop and foster strategic partnerships to improve the system of care at both the organizational level. I talked a little bit about the mission adjustments and so forth that we had to do. And then at the healthcare system-wide level, we'll talk more about advocacy and so forth that we had to do. So for us, we are research also institute. So we do research, so our research partnerships through our policy and advocacy, through our health and social services, and then our development side of things. So Start Care's approach to strategic partnerships, number one, which again, this is trying to address that next question around how do we scale through partnerships. One, we map the ecosystem and choose partners that address capability gaps, period. If I can do it, I'll do it. If I'm not able to do it, I've got to find someone who can do it and work well with me to do it. Number two is we center innovation to address needs of the community and organization. So innovation, and by the way, it's 125. I don't know how much, okay. All right, I'm rushing here. If I got time, let me slow down now. If I don't have time, I'll keep going, brother. You tell me. Come on now. My man. All right, let's do this. So, because I want to go back to philanthropy, because again, I mean, I've spoken to some of the, we deal with some of the, if I call the names of those organizations, you all be like, wow, they're amazing. They do great work. They give out all this money. But when you talk about innovation, to them, innovation is everything has got to be new. Yeah? Right? Can I get an amen? All right. Everything has got to be new. If it's not new, then we don't. But in this time and age when just surviving is what we need. That, yes, I'm innovating. We're innovating all the time, in our work that we do, the service we provide. We're moving just from, sort of a place-based model to a mobile model as well. We're getting mobile units. We're going into communities. We're community-based, and we're going where the need is. But at the same time, we're innovating all the time. Listen, if you're running a nonprofit, you are by nature an innovator. Every day you have to innovate because a problem comes up that didn't come up yesterday. And if you're providing that direct service, you got to figure it out, right? So you innovate every day, but their innovation, their understanding about innovation has got to be some brand new thing that nobody's ever heard of. And that's what they're holding us to. And I'm saying, I'm innovating every day. I have creative ways to address real life problems. And I'm doing that through strategic partnerships with people and individuals who are filling gaps. Collaboration should be the new form of innovation, because ultimately, if I take on an issue that's only going to that is time sensitive in the sense, or time restricted, this is a problem I have for 12 months. After this 12 months, this problem is no more, this challenge is no more. If I address that myself and build a whole system to do that, then ultimately in my book, then I'm left holding the bag. Those individuals who are working there, the people who are, doing the systems we created, the technology that we produced, all of this is now has to be put aside because the problem is no longer there, or what I'm trying to do, the goal is reached. And so the challenge is I've got to, it's an imperative. I've got to innovate through collaboration. Okay. And number 3 is build this coalition. This is where we're getting into to influence regulations, scale and impact, and ensure community buy-in. Develop fundraising arm. Number 4, develop fundraising. When I became a, can I just say something? Can I just be frank? When you are, I was a commissioner, right? 100, all these people working for you, right? Like, I've never thought for one day how I'm going to pay them, ever. It was not even a part of my psyche. I was like, you just get paid. You just show up, you just get paid. And oh, Lord. I ran a business before, so I understood what it meant to meet payroll, but I didn't have a business with hundreds of people and hundreds more and thousands relying on me every day. It was my small business that I had was a consulting firm, and it was just me and 3 people. Like, we were good. I could meet that payroll. I didn't have unions. I have them now, right? That's hard for nonprofits. I'm a son of union employees. I benefited from unions, but it's a challenge when you are a nonprofit providing healthcare in the space, and it's a lot. It costs us millions of dollars extra to do that, and we are for it, and we agree with it, and we want to do it, but it is difficult when the reimbursement rates don't match your actual expenses and what you have. Direct services, right, we're talking about. Why we need to change the system, because if the system had the right reimbursement rates or treated me like they treat a hospital system, because I am remember, I am the, what? The safety net of the safety net. Millions of New Yorkers, in my view, across the state are experiencing this challenge. All right, so next slide. This is how we do it. Why I put this on here, these are 4 core principles. We always bring it back to that because that helps drive the work, but also it deals with a lot of the social determinants of health issues that we're dealing with. So here's some ways that we went about doing this before I run out of time. On the research side and partnerships, and you could take some of the lessons that we learned. I'm just giving some of those, and then I'll wrap. One is sort of building sustainable partnerships, which is important for us. I know I'm at Columbia, but NYU does partner with us on our research side, which is important to us as an organization. Been with us for about 20 years, doing this work when it comes to federal research and biomedical research, in which we work with. But we're working with university systems, not only NYU, but a bunch of others, where we develop long-term and cross-sector collaborations. This is important. One of these, quick example of how you do systems change. We started before there was telehealth. The organization was doing telehealth with the University of Buffalo, a professor out there around looking who's a specialist in liver disease. Now, a lot of folks we serve suffer from this particular issue, and so we were working with them to come up with ways that we can serve those who are in our program who suffer from hepatitis C. Now, we've created now this new way of administering medication while we ourselves medicate them for their addiction. So it's all happening at the same time. It's being observed, so it's being done. And I can tell you right now, the rates in which we say cure or undetectable are up over 90%. But that was 9 years of research and biomedical research and all types of behavioral health research to produce that, and that was through collaboration. And so we changed the way that this is actually addressed within OTPs, because now everybody's doing it. Well, those who can and have the medical staff to do it are doing it. And so that's what I mean by utilizing this to develop innovative systems of care to supplement the current treatment gaps that we saw, and how we kind of use this research that we worked on for many years and are published. You can look at our website, all of our research is published. Now, every time I just put this up here so that you can take a deep breath, and because I'm exhausted, you're going to get one of these slides after every point so that you can see how exhausted it is for organizations like ourselves to actually do this work. This is just the research group of individuals that we work with, right? All right. Next is policy and advocacy. This is huge right here. I just jumped to the last bullet. Engage governmental officials to address policy gaps, inequitable funding, fragmented systems. The fact that we have to do so much, right, to actually engage with Medicaid, Medicare, or our payers. I have to create a whole structure and system, an ecosystem of individuals, of outside consultants, of inside consultants, of whatever, to just get paid for work that we are doing. And I can tell you right now, to the tune of millions, right, they're stuck in some sort of purgatory somewhere that we never get. So you budget that into your process. It's complete waste. And it's for services that are already been rendered. So organizations can't get that. That's why we need to advocate. That's us up in Albany. We go every year. We will continue to build and do that. That's part of how we are changing the system. And that's just some of them. I have 7 sites. We've got 5 elected officials for each site. You do the math. 7 locations. We're in Manhattan, we're in Brooklyn, we're in the Bronx, and we're growing. Development partners. This is also important for us. When you talk about systems change, we talk about partnership. This is critical. Philanthropic, academic, governmental. This is critical for those who provide the kind of care that we provide. And the anchor strategy I mentioned is very important, right? You have to figure out at some point, well, who are your anchors? Who's going to stand with you? What large organizations? And in some cases, like I used to do for all the mentors that I've ever had, I went to them and compelled them, you're going to be my mentor. Like, you have to do that to some of these organizations. You got to get in their face like, you're going to be my mentor. You're going to be my partner. You're going to be my anchor, as we do this work. Let's figure out a way to do it together, because here are my gaps. Some of it may be capacity gaps, right? Some of it may be just, access that you need to get into a room. Some is resource driven. Some of it is intellectually based, meaning that they have the intellectual capital, they have the people, they have the know-how to lend to you. And so we're doing all that work when it comes to our developmental partners as well. And actually, I want this slide to be a lot more, because that means that more people will be give me money and resources. So, but I just put it there again. Like, think about it, right? As nonprofits, we have to do all of this. All of this is happening. Not only, from is that okay? One more, yes. Social services. All right. This is our core of our work we do right now, and if you see the 4 social determinants of health on the other side there, it speaks to housing security, economic opportunity, food insecurity, access to care. So it's important that we work with industry partners to complement current start care services. That's for us. That's when we talk about partners. Leverage expertise for training is important. Develop and maintain relationship with industry partners to increase access to start care and other health-related services. While many people who suffer from addiction have issues when it pertains to needing a podiatrist, I don't have one. Dentistry, we do not have dentists working for us. So specialty care that is needed by the same particular group. So we have to partner with hospitals and others to actually get that done, to drive that system change. And then marketing is always a big deal. How do we sort of move the evidence-based practice forward? This is actually one story I wanted to put up here, not because I was a commissioner of SBS, but because I was the commissioner of SBS. This is a very important, the city does these individual training grants. And I don't know if people know that, but if you're a nonprofit, you should. They're essentially train your people for free. And even there was a gap, as many of you know, in the healthcare industry. There's a gap right now, and has been for some time when it comes to staffing. Many of us run 20% vacancy rates when it comes to specialized care that we have. We're competing with the hospital systems, and a lot of those hospital systems pay a lot more. So the people who really work for us are really mission-driven individuals. I mean, they're there because they really want to be there. But this particular issue is called case sacklers, or those who deal with those who walk through the door. This is people who are suffering from addiction specifically, and the challenges that they have. So they had this program, and we talked to the commissioner at the time, Commissioner Groves. We brought them in. We showed them why, within industry-wide, this is a big issue. We need these individuals. They're essentially the counselors for our workers, and we had to go back, and they went back to the drawing board and said, how can we get actually this particular thing? I'm being very specific here, and many of you may not have to do it, but this is when we talk about systems change. This is what we're talking about. We went and spoke to them, worked with them, advocated. They came to our site. They did visits back and forth, all this, to ultimately where, we have a huge gap right now in our industry across the state. They cannot find these individual counselors to actually be in the systems and do the work, that they're now offering this for free. So now we have this for the first time in the history of the city, this particular thing, which addresses a particular gap in the workforce for this type of work is being addressed. So we need these types of collaboration in order for us to actually do what we need to do. And all these people, this is actually not everybody, but this is it's a lot more, because that's a core of our work. So I will stop here because I want to make sure we have time for questions. But the fact that I wanted to just leave with you all is, for us who are on the ground, and we're thinking about what we need to do to make really systemic change, we really need to reimagine, rethink. We need to repurpose. We need to change systems. If we don't change the system, the problem that the system creates will still be there. I want to work myself out of a job. I think every person in nonprofit, you want to not have to be doing this, either because of lack of resources or misappropriation of resources within the public sector and private sector. Somewhere down the line, there's a systemic racism that's built into structural things that we deal with, sort of roads, streets, environments. If you look at, lastly I said, if you look at where overdose deaths are happening in the city, every one of those places have high poverty. They have health issues, complications, hospital visits, mental health challenges. 1 in 4 people in the city of New York suffer from a mental health issue. That doubles or triples within those communities. Redlining, it goes all the way back there, all in the same literal zip code. And we want to know structurally if we can address this by me providing the service only. No, something has to happen within the entire system. Systems change is very important. And when we think about partnership, that's what we have to look for. Thank you so much for listening to my talk here.
Well,
I did that as quickly as I could.
Reverend Commissioner, do we have any questions? Gretchen, come around. Hold on.
Thank you for that talk. I'm going to ask you to do something, please, that is you're going to be ambivalent about. Can you be specific about philanthropies who are turning their backs on you?
No.
Or what it is they're...
Because I still want to meet with them. I still need them.
Would you give us some clues and we'll think on it?
I don't know. Look, all I say is this. Look, I think from a reality perspective, I appreciate the candor. And I think maybe we need to be, this is also like some bravery. You're right. We have to actually be a little brave about it. But I've talked to, a couple, CEOs of those particular philanthropic organizations. And I just think their boards are driving a lot of what they're doing too. I think there's a historical sort of connection. This is just the way we do it, but they're just not being responsive to what's now. Like every philanthropic organization needs to actually think about how do I undergird the actual existing ecosystem that is there right now in order for these organizations and people who are doing this work to actually be around after all of this, because this too shall pass at some point, comes to an end. What actually will be left behind when we get through this particular time in our history? And I think they're not forward thinking where that is concerned.
Thank you. Rob Castaneda, Executive Director of Beyond the Ball, also a Commissioner for the Chicago Park District and a Commissioner for the Public Building Commission of Chicago. So I want to say, first of all, thank you to Columbia University School of Professional Studies. I participated online last Friday, came in person for today, and it was a great lineup of speakers today. Thank you to everybody. You were a great way to end out the day. The energy, you brought it today. So thank you for that. And I also want to, we need to make time, but I want to mention the student back here who presented right before this.
Wonderful.
You're really onto something right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to stay in touch with you. I have this saying that I love C students, and that's exactly why. What he said back there. But I want to. He's not a C student. No.
Point of clarification.
No. I'm saying like because we undervalue the contribution. Like in a neighborhood, right? C students, they're always there. They're consistent. They volunteer, and it's like whereas like those A students, like they're dreaming about coming to Columbia University. So we know they're there, but they're not going to be there for long, right? And so, but I want to say, just so much of what you said resonated with me today. And even like with foundations and that whole idea, my thing is like, when it comes to organizations that are like based in community, foundations want to give you money to do stuff and to create new stuff. And they don't usually want to give you money to think. And right, and so I think it's a conversation. There's a lot of synergy there, and it looks like a lot of folks. Because I think people in the room were just like, I heard a lot of. I almost said, "Come on now," right when you were talking.
Yeah.
But I just want to thank you for that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, all right.
Hi, I really appreciated your comments on anchor institutions and kind of really thinking through how impactful they are. And I was wondering if you have specific examples, in addition to your own organization, of, examples where anchor institutions have been really quintessential in moving the needle. And I am also wondering if it's always a nonprofit or in the kind of semi-private sector, or whether there have been other kinds of institutions that have also, and I think of municipal government, but it doesn't have to be, right?
Yeah. So 2 quick examples. Since I'll pull it from my other kind of hat. So and I'll call these organizations because they actually did the work. So Lincoln Center, for example. So when I was commissioner during the pandemic, by the way, I'm still recovering. I am in recovery from that. It was the most traumatic experience I've ever had professionally, and also, next to Superstorm Sandy. It was very traumatic, and I think a lot of us who were in government at the time, who were responsible, obviously, for the city and me in particular, when I was Commissioner of Small Business Services, which also meant all the workforce for the city. So we went from 4% unemployment to 20% unemployment in a matter of a month. That's 1 million people out of work, all on our backs. So all of our workforce centers, everything that we had, everything collapsed in the sense that they had to shut the doors. All of 230,000 small businesses in the city, we had to shut their doors, 27,000 restaurants, and we had to come up immediately with solutions to deal with all of this because ultimately, the city needed to survive. And obviously, healthcare was the number one issue. But right after that, if you go back and look at any of the press conferences and everything, it was always about health, 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 health. Next, business, work, jobs, and so forth. How we do that. So one of the things that we came up with during that time was to really think about this anchor strategy and kind of building it in a way that is, sustainable, working with large institutions. So 2 large institutions that we did this with, one was Lincoln Center. Lincoln Center was very strategic in the way that we approached them, utilizing their resources, utilizing their space, their influence, and building within their procurement processes to help service those businesses that are in the community. We also worked somewhat with Presbyterian as well. Did some work there. And then also ultimately with developing resources for small businesses. Again, I'm just giving this example. Banks like TD Bank and Bank of America and so forth, where they provided opportunities. I don't know if you remember earlier on, you needed to have an account with the bank in order to get your PPP loan and all these other things. So they restructured a lot of that work, and we did a lot of work with them in order to address. So that's how I put it as anchor. So in a kind of a tumultuous time, we were able to utilize those individual organizations as anchors. And by the way, it is sustainable because all that work is continuing, and we've done it with scores of organizations across the city. So we need more of that. Kind of working larger organizations, institutions, governmental entities, working with smaller institutions and nonprofits who provide, great service to communities. That's what that program is about. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. This was a great 2 days. Scores of you in person, 500 people registered online, some great speakers, great questions, and a lot to think about over the next couple of days, weeks, months, as we wrap up our semester here, but head into the summer. By the way, did I mention the students looking for internships? Did I say that already? Okay, I'll say it again, but you're right. We always try to be there for our students. But by the way, you could be a student too, Yes, we do offer a master's in this program. I think Lonnie and Vicky are going to be really mad at me if I say this, but we're going to do a certificate program soon. Which is a lot less money. Fewer credits, but also less money. That actually helps too, right? But we're trying to find pathways for a lot of the leaders, and not just nonprofit actual executive directors, CEOs, but also your staff to be able to take advantage of what we do here at the university. But having said that, we're going to be doing this again. I'd like to do this again next year if you all come back, and we'll have some more conversations. But you're going to get a survey online. Just tell us how we did and what we could do better the next time, and what you'd like to hear from us over the next several weeks and months, because we want this to be a continuing conversation, and I promise that it will be. We got some T-shirts in the back, so it's more swag stuff, right? And I think there may be even still a little bit of food left. But again, thank you so very much. Please continue to interact, collaborate, and we are here as a resource. Thank you all very much. God bless. Thank you.